Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about What If Deku Had a Wake-Up Call Part 2. If you guys enjoy this What If and want to see Part 3, comment down below. And let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story NMFergus from 𝗬𝗏. So let's start the video. It's like it all happened in slow motion. The boulder hit Todoroki at an angle and sent him flying to the side. Bakugou used his quirk to propel himself and Midoriya to their falling boyfriend, who Midoriya managed to grab. As they approached the ground, Midoriya used his quirk to ease the landing, while Bakugou did the same. "I told you to walk away. I will get what I want," the man said, approaching them again. Bakugou barely moved fast enough to get in front of Midoriya, who held an unconscious and bleeding Todoroki, and shield them from the barrage of rocks thrown their way with his explosions. Bakugou glanced back at his boyfriends, and was glad to see they were all right for the most part. "Kekken, look out!" Bakugou regretted looking away from the fight. When more rocks came at him faster than he could blast them away, he took the full force of the rocks, getting hit all over by the small rocks. He fell back, gashes on his legs, arms, chest, and one on his head. No, Midoriya set Todoroki down and went over to Bakugou, shaking him lightly. Kekken. It was no use, he was unconscious. This all could have been avoided if they didn't try and interfere. The man walked toward them, rocks floating around him. Midoriya gritted his teeth, summoning one for all. He didn't really have a choice now. He had to fight, or else he would be killed, or worse, Todoroki and Bakugou would be the man. Laughed. "You're finally going to fight me? Too bad, you'll get in trouble if you hurt me with your quirk." Midoriya for a moment found that he didn't care. All he cared about were his boyfriends who were injured by the man in front of him. In fact, that's all he thought about as he raced toward the villain. Nothing else mattered. Midoriya ignored the stares he got as he carried Bakugou and Todoroki to the infirmary. All he thought about was getting them to Recovery Girl. The only thing that made him stop was when Aizawa stood directly in front of him. "Move, they need to get to Recovery Girl." Aizawa almost shrank away at the look Midoriya gave him. He definitely felt a shiver down his spine at the intimidating aura the boy was producing. "Let me carry one of them. Having them slung over your shoulders like that isn't good." Midoriya bit his lip and handed Todoroki over to Aizawa, moving Bakugou so that he was holding him bridal style. Together, the two made their way to the infirmary. In mostly silence, most people avoided them because not only was Aizawa the most terrifying teacher, but the aura Midoriya was producing screamed to stay away. What happened? It's not important right now. Midoriya did not feel like talking. His boyfriends were seriously hurt, and Midoriya wasn't any better, having been covered in bruises and cuts. Aizawa sighed, deciding that he would wait until Bakugou and Todoroki were all right. Recovery Girl looked at them in confusion and surprise when they entered. The teacher and teen placed the injured boys on two of the beds, then stepped back to let Recovery Girl help them. It was starting to get dark outside. Aizawa gently placed a hand on Midoriya and led him outside the room, much to the boys' protest. Once they were outside, Aizawa stared at him. "What happened?" Midoriya bit his lip as it started to quiver. His eyes started to get wet with tears. They. He started sobbing, placing his hands over his face. Aizawa sighed and hesitantly pulled him into a hug, rubbing his back. "Hey, you guys are safe now. Bakugou and Todoroki will be fine." Midoriya clung to Aizawa, crying, "More of a villain attacked us on our way back from the grocery store because of the thing with All Might." Midoriya nodded. He had a quirk that let him control rocks. What happened? Aizawa knew that Midoriya would be smart enough to try and escape, so that he wouldn't get in trouble with the law. But it didn't look like that had worked. Midoriya had calmed down a little bit at this point. "I had grabbed Kekken and Shoto and jumped up, trying to avoid the ground and get away all at once. It didn't work, though. The guy sent a huge boulder at us, and Midoriya started crying harder again." Aizawa started rubbing Midoriya's back again. "Hey, it's all right. Recovery Girl will take care of Todoroki and Bakugou. They are both strong, so they'll recover in no time. You need to tell me what happened though." Midoriya took a few deep breaths, hiccuping a little. "I was going to throw Kekken and Shoto out of the way, but Shoto pushed us to the side with his flames. He got hit by the boulder. He sacrificed himself. It should have been me." Aizawa shook his head. "It shouldn't have been any of you." "What happened next?" "I grabbed Todoroki and we landed on the ground. Bakugou moved in front of us and shielded us from the rocks. But he looked back at us for a second, and the villain got the upper hand. I moved in front of them to protect them, and Midoriya sniffled. Aizawa internally groaned, wanting to just get all the information right away, but not wanting to push Midoriya too far. "And what happened next?" Midoriya sucked in a breath. I blacked out. The next thing I knew, the villain was gone, and I was covered in scratches and bruises. I grabbed Kekken and Shoto and took them back here." Aizawa had a feeling Midoriya wasn't telling the complete truth, but he decided to leave it at that. He could always question the boy later. Instead, he let go of Midoriya and patted his head. "I'm sure Bakugou and Todoroki will want to see you when they wake up, and you need to get patched up yourself." Midoriya nodded and shuffled back into the infirmary. In the meantime, Aizawa decided to follow the path they would have taken to the grocery store if he was right about his hunch. Then he would have some challenges ahead of him. Midoriya sat in the infirmary holding both Bakugou and Todoroki's hands. Recovery girl had healed them the best she could, wrapping up their wounds that she couldn't heal all the way. Midoriya had not let her even think about taking care of him until both Todoroki and Bakugou were stable and completely patched up. He looked up and tensed when the door opened, but relaxed when some of his classmates walked in. Sorry about dinner being cancelled. Something came up, he weakly joked. Kirishima sat on the edge of Bakugou's bed. Aizawa told us what happened. We went looking for you guys when you never came back. Midoriya nodded in understanding and looked at the ground, holding the two hands tighter. I couldn't protect them from being hurt. They both sacrificed their safety for me. You were able to chase the villain away though, right? Uraraka spoke up, putting a hand on Midoriya's shoulder. Midoriya looked up and bit his lip, looking around and seeing who was there. Kirishima, Uraraka, Kaminari, Ashido, and Zero. He could trust them, right? I didn't chase them away. What do you mean? Ida asked. Midoriya took a deep breath. Roman 2 beat him up worse than I should have. I even hit him after he went unconscious. I was blinded by anger when I shouldn't have been. I chucked him into some bushes and walked away at the moment. I didn't care. All I cared about were Kaken and Shoto. I beat him half to death and left him in a random bush. I wasn't heroic at all. Everyone took a moment to process what they were told. They couldn't believe that Midoriya had done that. Midoriya, who cared so much about everyone, cared about saving everyone he could, had left an injured man in a random bush. Of course, they were a villain, but that still was so out of character for him. I would have done the same, Kirishima spoke up. I mean, if a villain beat up Denki to the point of being unconscious and bleeding. Kaminari nodded. I would do the same. Midoriya smiled sadly. You too? I doubt it. Love does things to us. It makes us do things we wouldn't usually do, Uraraka said, rubbing Midoriya's back. Yeah, she has a point. Everyone looked up in shock to see 𝗵𝗲 leaning against the window, arms crossed. She rolled her eyes as everyone tensed. First, I left the League of Villains. Second, not here to hurt anyone. Third, I took care of that guy. Kirishima, who had his arm hardened, paused. What do you mean you took care of him? 𝗵𝗲 shrugged. Well, I'm one of Stain's followers and Stain likes Midoriya. Because of that, I made a vow to protect Midoriya in any way I can. She looked at Midoriya. I saw the end of the fight on my way home from work. Since you had it handled, I stayed in hiding once you left. I took the guy, and after maybe giving him amnesia, I dropped him off at a hospital that doesn't ask questions. I made it so that no one could tie you to the crime. Of course, your teacher. And now some of your classmates know, but oh well. Everyone looked at her. Various levels of confusion. 𝗵𝗲 raised an eyebrow. What I've always considered myself more of a vigilante than a villain. I prefer to follow my ideology. Even if it breaks laws along the way, I will always make sure that Stain's chosen ones are safe and become real heroes. Midoriya tends to attract the most trouble, so I tend to keep an eye on him. Thank you. I don't deserve it, though. True heroes shouldn't be blinded by rage like I was. Like your friend said, love changes you and makes you do things you normally wouldn't. Don't you think that your boyfriends would do the same for you? I certainly know my girlfriend would do it for me. Hell, I'd even kill Stain for her. 𝗵𝗲 walked over and patted Midoriya's head. If you really think it's that bad, then just try to improve for a minute. There, everyone had forgotten 𝗵𝗲 was actually a villain. Well, vigilante, as she put it. By the way, my girlfriend texted me about what happened with her talking to you. Did she really summon a tank? 𝗵𝗲 asked, sitting on the edge of Todoroki's bed. Midoriya chuckled. Yeah, she didn't want to be caught by Kaken. I want to talk to her about her quirk though, and yours is like this one person in class 1BS, only slightly different. Yeah, not going to tell you sorry, but we're probably going to fight again eventually. And I don't want to give you an upper hand. She chuckled and crossed her legs, relaxing. Everyone mentally smacked themselves, remembering just who she was. All right, well, let you go this time because you saved Deku's reputation. But you need to leave, Ashido said, pointing at 𝗵𝗲 with a serious face. 𝗵𝗲 sighed, holding her hands up in defeat. All right. She patted Midoriya's head. I'll be talking to you soon, though I want the food container back. And with that, she jumped out of the window, to everyone's surprise. That was strange. Zero spoke up. Midoriya shrugged. That's one of the more normal things that I've dealt with lately. She's actually pretty nice for someone classified as a villain. I'm surprised she left the League of Villains, though I'm glad she took care of the guy, though, Ashido admitted. Kirishima nodded. There is a problem, though we're not going to tell what really happened. But Aizawa. Midoriya bit his lip. I lied to him. I said I blacked out after Bakugou got hurt, and that the villain fled if 𝗵𝗲 took care of the evidence. Then Uraraka plopped down into an empty seat. This whole situation is messed up, not to mention stressful. Let's just pretend this never happened. We don't know what we know. All that happened was that Midoriya, Bakugou, and Todoroki were attacked. They tried to get away, couldn't, and so they were forced to fight in self-defense. The villain fled and Midoriya carried Bakugou and Todoroki back here. Anyone would side with Midoriya, Kirishima suggested. Everyone agreed, though with slight hesitation. For some people, they all had a bad feeling in their gut, though, like they were doing something wrong. and they could be caught at any moment. That only worsened when the door opened to reveal All Might, who looked concerned and worried. He rushed over and hugged Midoriya tightly. "Are you all right? I heard about what happened. I'm so sorry. We thought that if you were with other people, it would deter villains from attacking." But Midoriya shook his head, hugging All Might back. "No one is dead or permanently injured. Shoto and Katsuki should be waking up soon, actually. But what about you?" All Might pulled back to look Midoriya up and down, assessing all the bruises and cuts. The Baka Squad and Uraraka decided to give the two some privacy, and silently left, deciding that they would come back in the morning. Midoriya looked away, feeling ashamed. He wanted to confess to All Might what he had done, how he had been unheroic and didn't deserve any concern. But at the same time, he didn't want to disappoint his father figure, to make him think that choosing Midoriya to be his successor was a mistake. So he decided to stick with the story Kirishima had come up with. It made him feel horrible, but he felt like he had to do it. "I'm fine. I've had way worse. I'm more concerned about Kaken and Shoto," Midoriya explained as he gestured to the duo. "I managed to chase the villain away after he knocked them out." Midoriya felt like his mouth was full of lead. He clenched his fist till his knuckles turned white, hoping All Might wouldn't notice. All Might sighed, but smiled and patted Midoriya's head. "I'm proud of you. You first tried to escape, but when that didn't work out, you protected Bakugou and Todoroki and won." Midoriya weakly smiled back at him. What All Might had just said was true. He protected his boyfriends and won, even if the victory left a sour taste in Midoriya's mouth. "Thank you. Can you go talk to my mom, though, and let her know I'm all right? She thinks I underestimate my injuries, and it would be better if someone else told her I wasn't that injured." In truth, he just wanted to be alone. "Of course, I'll talk to you later." "Though all right," All Might said, heading to the door. Midoriya nodded. Yeah, he watched as All Might left, then allowed himself to fully relax. He just wanted to be alone with his boyfriends right now. He glanced back at the two teens and smiled. While sitting back down in between them, Midoriya took Bakugou and Todoroki's hands again. Leaning back against the chair he was sitting in slowly, after feeling all his energy drained from him, Midoriya fell asleep. Bakugou growled as he woke up, covering his face with his left hand. He felt awful. The teen was sore all over and had a major headache. Had he gotten drunk again? No. He didn't remember drinking. In fact, the last thing he remembered was Bakugou sat up with a gasp, looking around trying to see what was happening, when he realized he was in the infirmary. He calmed down a little. He calmed down even more, though, when he saw Midoriya sitting next to him, holding his right hand. Bakugou looked outside to see the gray early morning scenery that he knew well. He was guessing that he had slept through the night. The explosive teen's attention was drawn to the other bed, next to his, by the sound of someone groaning. He quickly recognized it to be Todoroki's voice, and looked around Midoriya to see his other boyfriend covered in bandages and bruises. "Shoto, you awake?" "Yes, I am. I feel awful." Bakugou snorted. "Well, yeah, you were hit by a giant boulder." Todoroki slowly sat up and leaned against the wall to look at Bakugou, also noticing how Midoriya was holding their hands. "It looks like Izuku wasn't badly injured." "That's good." Bakugou nodded, looking over the smaller boy. "I remember after you got hit, he grabbed you, and we landed back on the ground. Then the villain sent more rocks at us, which I blew away with my explosions. And then I can't remember what happened after that." Todoroki looked over the blonde teen, then himself, in guessing that you got knocked out too. "Which means Izuku Deku must have protected us." Bakugou growled. "That pisses me off, yet makes me proud at the same time. I'm the one who is supposed to protect you guys. I can protect both of you as well. But yes, he shouldn't have had to protect us, especially since the villain was after him. He must have defeated them. Though that or a hero showed up." Bakugou snorted, leaning against the wall like Todoroki. They sat in silence for a few minutes, trying to process all that had happened. "It was stupid to throw us away from the boulder. I was about to blast us out of there." Todoroki smiled slightly. "All I was thinking about was protecting you and Izuku." Well, you scared both of us." Bakugou looked over at Todoroki for a second there. "I thought you had gotten killed." Todoroki frowned, processing the new information. "I'll make sure to find a better way out of situations like that." "Good." They sat in silence again, just enjoying each other's presence, occasionally glancing at each other. That is till Midoriya started to stir, drawing both of their attention. Midoriya yawned and used the hand holding Bakugou to rub his eyes. "I guess I fell asleep," he muttered. "Yes, you did," Todoroki said. While smiling, Midoriya perked up and looked at his boyfriends, smiling brightly. "You two are awake. I'm glad." "Damn, you are going to kill us with that cute look," Bakugou joked, blushing slightly. He was just happy that his boyfriends were all right. Midoriya laughed lightly. "Sorry, I'm just so happy you two are all right. I got so scared when Shoto was hit by the boulder. Then taken by all those rocks, you both fainted, and I." Midoriya frowned, but shook his head and smiled at Todoroki and Bakugou. "How are you two feeling?" "I feel sore all over and Katsuki has a headache. But we'll be all right. We're more concerned about you." "What happened after Katsuki passed out?" Todoroki asked, getting more comfortable. "Yeah, did you kick that guy's ass all by yourself?" Midoriya frowned again, and finally let go of Todoroki and Bakugou's hands, putting his own in his lap instead. I guess you could say that." Todoroki raised an eyebrow, while Bakugou furrowed his brows. "What the hell does that mean?" Midoriya took a deep breath. Why was it so much easier to tell his friends than his boyfriends? I sorta beat him half to death and left him in a bush, but 𝗵𝗲𝗄 stopped by earlier and said that she put him in a hospital after giving him amnesia. I was blinded by rage and did something unheroic. Bakugou looked shocked, while Todoroki only looked slightly confused. How is that unheroic? Yes, leaving him in a bush wasn't the best idea, but beating him up was just an act of self-defense. He was planning on doing bad things to you. And he did bad things to us. He could have been planning on killing you. Todoroki moved to pat Midoriya's head. You were heroic in defending us and yourself, but I agree with Shoto plus. You said that the villain lady took care of it, right? It's no big deal. Bakugou smirked, clearly proud of Midoriya. Midoriya shook his head. No, it wasn't heroic. I beat him up even after he was unconscious. I was acting on pure rage. Katsuki acts on pure rage all the time. And we don't say he's not heroic, Shoto pointed out. I do not. Well, maybe sometimes. But yeah, I would have done the same in your position. Only worse, Bakugou admitted. Midoriya looked up at them. And it was only then that the two teens noticed that he was actually crying. He wiped away his tears though and smiled slightly. Thanks for trying to cheer me up. I'm going to try and better myself so it doesn't happen again. That's impossible. You're already the best, Bakugou and Todoroki said in unison, causing them to look at each other in confusion. Midoriya laughed. He was happier now that his boyfriends were awake and their usual selves. There was still one problem though, and he chose that moment to step through the door. Midoriya, we need to talk to you alone. Midoriya paled and gulped at the sight of Aizawa standing in the doorway with All Might standing behind him, both with serious looks. The green-haired teen knew this was coming. He knew Aizawa would find out. That only meant that he felt more prepared, though as he stood up deciding to accept his fate. All right, Midoriya had to use all his willpower to not run away from the two adults in front of him. Aizawa was looking at him in a way that screamed that he knew at least a little bit of what happened. There was also annoyance, disappointment, and a hint of concern, which was bad enough on his own All Might's face, though his face showed disappointment, shock, slight anger, sadness, and so much more. Midoriya actually flinched when he saw his pseudo-father's face. Midoriya, you know why we want to talk to you, correct? Aizawa asked. Midoriya gulped and slowly nodded. I think I know why. From what I can tell, you were telling the truth. For the most part, you did try to flee at first. But after the villain knocked Bakugou and Todoroki out, you were forced to fight, correct? Midoriya nodded, sweating nervously. His mouth felt dry and his head was spinning. He couldn't move, he could barely breathe. The looks he was getting didn't help at all. According to what you told me, you blacked out after you charged the villain, and the next thing you knew the villain was gone. That wasn't true, was it? Aizawa stared into Midoriya's eyes, daring him to try and lie. I don't know what you mean by that, Midoriya said, trying to dodge the question. Izuku, tell us the truth. All Might's voice was sharp and to the point, causing Midoriya to flinch. Midoriya grabbed his arm and squeezed it tight, trying to ground himself. He knew he was caught. He had to tell the truth, even if it caused him pain to do so. I didn't black out. I got blinded by rage. All I could think about was Kaken and Shoto, and how that man had almost killed them. How he would have killed them if I didn't do something. I wanted to make him feel as much pain as I felt, as Shoto and Kaken felt. Midoriya squeezed his arm tighter, his nails digging into his skin. I continued to hit him. Even after he passed out, I managed to stop myself before I did something even worse. I put him in a bush and grabbed Shoto and Kaken and took them here. Midoriya couldn't stand to look at his teachers. Instead, he kept his eyes on the floor. He figured at best he would get expelled, and at worst he wasn't anywhere nearby when I went there. Do you know where he went? Aizawa asked. It was 𝗵𝗲𝗄. She showed up out of nowhere and told me that she took him to a hospital, then left before I could do anything. She also said she left the League of Villains, Midoriya explained with a shaky voice. Is there anyone else who knows about this? All Might asked. Midoriya quickly decided he didn't want to get anyone else in trouble. No one else knows. That's not what Kirishima said. Midoriya's breath hitched. Did they really snitch on him? He honestly wouldn't blame them. But still, don't worry, they didn't give the information willingly. I had to use my quirk. Midoriya looked to the side to see Shinso leaning against a wall, neutral expression on his face. Hitoshi. Aizawa overheard them talking about it. They wouldn't tell him anything, so he had me use my quirk on them. It was hard to get them to respond, of course, but in good at pushing people's buttons, if you remember. Shinso grinned, then let his face fall. He was concerned about what was going to happen to one of his best friends, but he didn't want to disobey Aizawa. Midoriya slowly nodded and looked back at the floor. So am I going to be expelled? Midoriya could barely get the words out. That's what usually would happen in this case, along with being arrested, that's why. Aizawa got cut off when the infirmary door slammed open, revealing Bakugou, who had an angry expression, and Todoroki, whose face was shadowed. Todoroki's right side was starting to ice over, while his left radiated heat. Bakugou himself had tiny explosions going off in his hands. If you're going to expel Deku, then you are going to have to expel us. I agree with Katsuki. It's our fault in the first place that Izuku was forced into the situation, so we should be punished as well. Midoriya looked at the two in shock, and all he couldn't believe what he was hearing. He smiled sadly and shook his head, tears welling up in his eyes. Thank you. But this is my punishment. You two don't deserve to be expelled. What I did was wrong. And you had no part in it. Like hell. Well, let you get expelled and continue on here. Bakugou grabbed Midoriya's shoulder. We love you, which means that we couldn't go to this school if you weren't here. Todoroki nodded in agreement, gently grabbing Midoriya's other shoulder. Aizawa sighed and rubbed his head. You three are giant headaches. What would usually happen would be Midoriya getting expelled and going to prison. However, that's not going to happen. Midoriya looked at Aizawa in confusion. What? But how is that not going to happen? We're doing a cover-up. 𝗵𝗃 took care of the hard part apparently. I guess it's a good thing that you have a villain who wants you to be a hero. We already told the others. Shinso explained a cover-up. But why? Midoriya couldn't wrap his head around it. He was glad he wasn't going to be expelled, but because we know that this was a one-time thing and that you're better than this, it would be a waste to expel you and ruin your chances of being a hero by going to jail, All Might said, while resting a hand on Midoriya's head. It is our job as teachers to shape you to be a good hero. If we expelled you, it would look like we failed at our jobs, Aizawa said, looking away. It was clear, though, that it was more than that he and All Might really care about their students, and they didn't want to see any of them get in trouble over this. Midoriya had started crying and just couldn't stop, even though he had made a mistake. So many people were there for him and ready to help him with it. Thank you, I really don't deserve this. But thank you, that's where you're wrong, Izuku. Todoroki pulled Midoriya into a hug. You deserve this more than anyone. You've worked hard all your life to be a hero. Even though people said you couldn't, you worked hard to get your quirk, something that we were lucky enough to be born with. You deserve the world. I have to agree with young Todoroki on that. However, there is a catch. Midoriya looked at All Might in confusion. Catch. Uraraka, Kirishima, Kaminari, Shido, and Shiro have to do 30 hours of community service each, while you, Todoroki, and Bakugou have to do 50 each, Aizawa said with a menacing grin. Wait, why us? Bakugou asked angrily. You and Todoroki seemed eager to share Midoriya's punishment before, so now you get your wish, Aizawa said, still grinning. Bakugou opened his mouth to argue, but closed it, not finding anything to say. Instead, he just pouted. And lucky for you, it's the same thing that Izuku spent his whole summer doing after middle school as training, so it shouldn't be too bad. All Might chimed in now, also grinning. Midoriya let out a sigh of both relief and annoyance. Did people really pollute the beach after I spent the whole summer cleaning it up? Oh well, at least it should be easier this time. You're also not allowed to use your quirks, Aizawa added. Bakugou let out a frustrated scream. Yeah, that was pretty much my reaction. Midoriya turned around to see the Baka squad and Uraraka standing there looking sheepish. It was Kirishima that had spoken up. At least we're doing this together, and it can help us train our muscles, Uraraka cheered. Midoriya chuckled and shook his head. He was happy that he had the life he did now. He didn't really want anything to change, but life marches on, bringing all sorts of twists and turns that included more villains, each with different and unique quirks that they would eventually have to face. Midoriya wanted to laugh at everyone's expressions when they met up at the beach to start their community service. He also wanted to cry, though all his hard work appeared to be pointless since the beach looked like it had before he had cleaned it. He realized that it wasn't exactly pointless, though. Without all that hard work, he wouldn't have been able to inherit One for All. Whoa, this place is trashed. You're telling me you cleaned all of this up before without a quirk? Midoriya Kirishima looked at Midoriya in awe, which made the shorter boy laugh. Yeah, it sucks that people ruined it again. It was so nice when I finally got it clean. Midoriya sighed and stretched. Oh well, it will be easier this time around, plus there's not as much as when I first did it. Everyone looked at Midoriya in surprise as he walked down and calmly lifted up a ratty old couch. Midoriya in turn raised an eyebrow at them. Come on, your hours don't start till you start cleaning. Present Mike is watching us from nearby. Remember that spurred everyone into motion as they moved to start cleaning up. Midoriya was the one who helped the most with the heavy lifting, followed by Kirishima and Bakugou. Uraraka had the hardest time out of anyone because of the fact that she couldn't touch something with her whole hand or else it would start to float. It was after an hour, though, that almost everyone was too exhausted to move. Uraraka, Kaminari, Shiro, and Shido sat close together on the ground, using each other as something to lean on. Todoroki was leaning against a fridge, not as tired as the ones on the ground, but one could still see he needed a break. Kirishima and Bakugou were driven by pride as they both moved an old fridge together, but they were starting to slow down. Only Midoriya was still full of energy as he moved an armchair to the furniture trash pile. Midoriya had to bite his lip to hold back his laughter at the sight of all of them. Are you guys already that tired? It's only been an hour. Shut up, Deku. It's not fair that you have super strength and super endurance even without using your quirk. Uraraka pouted. Midoriya would have pointed out that he needed to in order to compete with people who had quirks their whole lives, but decided against it when he realized she was just tired instead. He pulled out his phone to check the time. Well, it is lunchtime. I guess we could take a small break. Hey, why is everyone just standing around? You're not going to complete your hours this way. Present Mike said, coming up to the group lunch. We need lunch, Kaminari and Zero chanted in unison present. Mike laughed. Alright Il, go get you guys some lunch. You better be working while I'm gone though. And with that he left to go get everyone some lunch. Ashido sighed in relief. Food will make things so much better. I can't wait. Midoriya rolled his eyes and picked up a giant TV. So are you guys going to do what President Mick said, or just sit there and start working when he comes back, trying to make him think you were working the whole time? Since they look this tired, I say they should take a little break. Everyone looked up to see a girl with orange yellow hair and pigtails with bright blue eyes standing near them holding a stack of bento boxes. She was wearing a purple dress with a white collar that looked a little too big on her, but made her look even cuter. Emiko, what are you doing here? Midoriya asked, going toward the girl. Oh, my girlfriend made lunch for you guys. She heard about your guys' punishment, and since we always walk by here on our dates, we decided to stop by to give you guys these, Emiko explained as a taller woman with purple braided hair and brown eyes partly covered by rectangle glasses walked up next to her carrying soda cans. She was wearing a dark blue dress with loose off-the-shoulder sleeves. Hi Midoriya, the purple-haired girl grinned. Wait, if you're Emiko's girlfriend, then that means Midoriya quickly put 2 and 2 together. Yup, my real name is Hitomi Katsumi. I trust you children with this information. Please don't make me regret it, Katsumi confirmed, while passing out the sodas. Wait, what? Confused Uraraka looked between Katsumi and Midoriya in confusion. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 Todoroki clarified the Bakugou, and Uraraka tensed up. Bakugou was the first to speak though. Wait, what the hell? What are you doing here? And did you poison these sodas or something? Midoriya and Katsumi facepalmed at the same time to Emiko and Todoroki's amusement. If I was going to poison you, I would have done it more subtly. Plus, I don't have any reason to poison you, do I? Plus, they're unopened. Katsumi smirked, handing the last soda to Midoriya. You know, she has a point, Midoriya admitted, opening his soda. The others calmed down seeing Midoriya not panicking and decided to drink their own sodas. Emiko took that chance to pass out the bento boxes. You know, you're really nice for a villain, Zero said, laughing. I consider myself more of a vigilante. Plus Emiko keeps me in line when I'm being Katsumi joked, hugging her girlfriend from behind, causing Ashido and Uraraka to awa Hitochin. I still gotta give Midoriya his bento. Emiko fake whined. Katsumi kissed Emiko's cheek and then let her girlfriend go. Emiko returned the favor after getting on her tiptoes and having the taller woman bend down, then handed Midoriya a bento that looked different than the others. Awa, why does Midoriya get a special one? Kaminari joked. Because if it weren't for him. Katsumi started hugging Emiko again. None of you would even get to interact with Emiko, and her gaze turned somewhat serious at this point. I only consider Midoriya and Todoroki to be true heroes. The rest of you, not at all. At that moment Todoroki and Midoriya were reminded of Stain. For everyone else it felt like Katsumi was staring straight through their souls. Emiko sighed and turned to flick Katsumi on the nose. Bad, Hitochin, bad. Katsumi's face scrunched up, but then she laughed. I suppose I would have to get to know everyone better before I made a more accurate judgment. At least I know that Keiken over here would do almost anything for his boyfriends, so that something everyone could feel the waves of anger radiating off of the explosive blonde. Midoriya weakly held out his hand, knowing that all hell was about to break loose. I don't think Keiken likes it when others awa. I struck a nerve. Boo-hoo, how sad. Isn't that right, Keiken? Katsumi smirked at Bakugou. Bakugou jumped up and ran at Katsumi, spilling his bento before he could reach the woman, though a pink sword pointed itself right at his throat. Everyone froze as Emiko pointed a pink glowing sword at Bakugou. Don't threaten my girlfriend. Midoriya quickly slipped in between the two and carefully pushed the sword to the side. Hey, it's all right, he didn't mean it. He wouldn't kill anyone, right? Kaken. Midoriya gave Bakugou a look that said, you better agree with me or else bad things will happen. Yeah, Bakugou hated it when Midoriya gave him that look. Emiko lowered the sword and let it disappear as Katsumi dragged her back. Sorry about that, because of my hobbies. Emiko is a bit protective. I can understand that. Oh, you guys might want to leave before President Mike comes back, Midoriya said, looking around. Yeah, you're probably right. I'll stop by your guys' room tonight for the bento boxes, Emiko announced back to smiling happily. Alright, well, make sure to have them all gathered for you. Have fun on your date. Todoroki went over to Midoriya and Bakugou and smiled slightly. While all of this was happening, the Bakugou and Uraraka were sitting and eating quietly, watching this play out like a drama show. They were ready to jump in if needed, of course, but they knew Todoroki and Midoriya had it handled. We will thank you, Katsumi said. She and Emiko then left after a few goodbyes. Emiko scares me, Zero admitted, finishing his bento. They both scare me, Kaminari snorted. They're really nice, though Emiko only acted like that because Bakugou threatened Katsumi, right? Ashido pointed out. True, Katsuki does have a little bit of an anger problem, and Katsumi probably has a lot of people who want her gone. It makes sense that Emiko would get protective. Kirishima mumbled loud enough for their small group to hear, but not loud enough for the three boyfriends to hear. Hey, we need to hurry up and eat so that we can get back to work before President Mike gets back, Midoriya pointed out. Everyone agreed and tried to quickly finish their delicious meals. because Bakugou had spilled his bento Midoriya and Todoroki had shared theirs with him. It was hard not to notice that Midoriya had more food and more variety, which reminded everyone of what Katsumi had said. "Oh Deku-kun, isn't your birthday coming up soon?" Uraraka asked after they had all started working again. "Actually, yeah, I guess I forgot about it since so much has been going on lately now that I think of it. It's actually going to be tomorrow," Midoriya answered as he carried yet another couch to the furniture trash pile. Everyone except for him froze, letting what Midoriya said sink in. Yet another birthday. They were learning about either the day of or the day before. They had limited time to plan. Almost everyone jumped at the sound of an explosion and looked at Bakugou, who now had a smoking face with his hand over it. Such an idiot. First, I forget Auntie's birthday, and now yours. 𝐭𝐽𝐽. It's alright, the most I usually do is hang out with my mother anyway. I'm not used to lots of presents or a party, so it's fine. Everyone felt a pain in their hearts hearing that they vowed that they would make sure that Midoriya had the best party ever, which brings us to today. Everyone had sent Midoriya to check on Present Mike so that they could talk a little bit about what they were going to do. But the real planning happened when they got back to the dorms. Uraraka had set up a group chat for everyone in class 1 to talk about what they were going to do. It was decided that Todoroki and Bakugou would take Midoriya out on a date in the morning, while everyone else set up the party. They were going to have All Might go and get the parents just like last time. And they were going to do an All Might themed party because everyone knew what Midoriya's dorm room looked like. Just as planned, Todoroki woke Midoriya up very early, while Bakugou cooked big fluffy pancakes. They were lucky Midoriya's birthday landed on a Sunday. Midoriya was confused at how early he was woken up, but that confusion melted away into joy when his boyfriends wished him happy birthday as he was presented a stack of pancakes. "After this, we're heading to the aquarium, so hurry up and eat," Bakugou said, while grabbing a thin box out of the closet that was wrapped in a bow. "You can wear this too." Midoriya took the box in confusion. "You bought me clothes. I'm thankful. But why? Because all of your shirts say pieces of clothing that isn't t-shirt. And it's fucking annoying," Bakugou yelled in response, going into the bathroom to change. "He has a point," Todoroki said. Midoriya rolled his eyes as he dug into his pancakes, enjoying them greatly. After that, he opened his present to see an oversized sweater, tight black pants, and white sneakers with big tongues. The sweater was pastel blue with a big pink stripe in the middle that went around his arms. Midoriya hesitantly put on the clothes to his boyfriend's approval, finding that one sleeve of the sweater fell off of his shoulder. The pants were really tight and would have really shown off his hips if the sweater didn't cover them. The shoes went well with the outfit. Overall, the outfit made him look adorable. Bakugou smirked. "Looks perfect, very cute," Todoroki said, blushing slightly. "Isn't it too big?" Midoriya asked, looking at the sleeves that went past his hands. "No," the other two said at once. After the two changed, they all went out to the aquarium. They had ordered a taxi since it was far away, and during the ride there they were goofing around and sharing cheesy pickup lines. They then went to the aquarium where Bakugou and Todoroki watched as Midoriya got excited about all the different creatures. Midoriya himself was fascinated by the sea life. He loved the turtles and different fish. His favorite part was the jellyfish, though, which Todoroki took notice of. Midoriya looked away from the jellyfish tank to his boyfriends, only to find that just Bakugou was standing there. "Where's Shoto?" Bakugou looked at the space next to him, confused to see their boyfriend gone the hell. "He was just here." Bakugou and Midoriya started looking around trying to find Todoroki. Izuku. Midoriya turned around to see Todoroki holding a jellyfish plushie. Bakugou went over to them ready to yell at Todoroki for leaving, but stopped when Todoroki gave Midoriya the plushie. "Oh, thank you, Todoroki. I love it," Midoriya said, smiling, while he took the plushie. An hour later, they finished their exploration of the aquarium. Bakugou knew that they wouldn't be done with preparations yet, so instead of going home, Bakugou took Todoroki and Midoriya to the arcades where they stayed for another hour or two. Finally, Bakugou got the text that they were ready. "Hey, I'm getting pretty tired, so how about we head home for a nap?" "Now that you mention it, I'm a little tired too. Thank you both so much for this birthday date." Midoriya kissed Bakugou, then Todoroki, leaving both boys blushing. After another taxi ride, this time with the three dozing slightly against each other, they arrived back at the dorms. "I was thinking we could go out again tonight for dinner, my treat," Todoroki said as the three walked up to the entrance. "All right, but nowhere too expensive. You two have already spoiled me enough today," Midoriya agreed, pouting slightly. "Shut up, it's your birthday, so we get to spoil the hell out of you today. No ifs, ands, or buts." Bakugou grabbed the door and yanked it open, pushing Midoriya inside. Midoriya stumbled in, barely staying upright. He looked around, but realized that he couldn't see anything since all the lights were off. His eyebrows furrowed as he slowly put two and two together. "I swear if I turn on the light and people jump out at me yelling surprise," Midoriya muttered as he reached for the place he knew where the light switch was. He felt Todoroki and Bakugou move behind him, and with a deep breath, he flicked on the lights, just as he thought his classmates, his mother, Bakugou's parents, All Might, and surprisingly Todoroki's sister all jumped out and yelled out surprise just because he knew it was coming, though that didn't stop Midoriya from tearing up. "Though thank you everyone, thank you so much." Midoriya covered his mouth as sobs started to escape, and his life had improved so much since the end of his middle school year, and he wouldn't have it any other way, and so everyone partied. When Midoriya first saw all of the All Might decorations, he was almost speechless with happiness. Then he was embarrassed when he realized All Might was standing next to him. All Might patted his back, though telling him that he wasn't the only person to have an All Might themed party, probably young Izuku. I do want to tell you something though, All Might whispered. Yes, All Might. Midoriya looked at All Might curiously. I want to make things official with your mother. That is, I want to ask her to be my girlfriend. Midoriya stared up at the ceiling, thinking about how crazy his life had become since middle school. He gained his idol's quirk and learned how to control it. He started dating his 2 wonderful boyfriends. He gained a lot of friends. And now his mom was officially dating his idol. He never expected his life to turn out like this, but he wouldn't change it for the world. Midoriya looked at his boyfriends who were sleeping on either side of him. He hasn't been getting the best sleep lately, but he would never bother Todoroki or Bakugou with it. Plus, Midoriya reasoned, at least he could see the 2 teens relaxed and unguarded. Once his stomach started growling, Midoriya decided that he should get up to eat. Lucky for him, both Todoroki and Bakugou were heavy sleepers, so it wasn't that hard to sneak out of bed. Even if Midoriya slept in the middle, the green-haired teen looked in Bakugou's fridge, but didn't see anything that he really wanted. That's when he remembered the half-eaten cake sitting in the common room fridge. Glancing back into the bedroom to make sure his boyfriends were still asleep, Midoriya quietly left the dorm room and headed down to the common room, hoping that no one had finished off the cake, though he doubted anyone did. When he made it down there, though, he was surprised to see someone already in the kitchen despite it being 3 in the morning. Looking closely, he saw it was Minta. Minta quickly noticed him tensing up, but then relaxed when he saw it was just Midoriya. Hey Midoriya. Hello Minta, Midoriya greeted as he made his way to the fridge. What are you doing up this early? I've been thinking. Minta started. You. I haven't been able to sleep lately. I was hungry, so I came down here to finish my cake. Midoriya grabbed his cake and stood up, closing the fridge door. He then grabbed a fork and settled at the counter next to Minta. What have you been thinking about, Midoriya? Would you say I'm hero worthy? That the way I am now, I could be a good hero. Midoriya paused, just as he was about to cut the cake with his fork. He looked at Minta and started going over all he knew about Minta. His quirk wasn't the flashiest, but it could be really useful at trapping enemies and taking down weapons. His personality, though, wasn't the most heroic. Like Minta shook his head. That's what I thought. I've realized it myself. I'm not a good person at all. The only reason I tried to be a hero was because I thought it would make me popular with females. Everything I do is because of perverted motivations. The way I am now, I could never be a good hero, or even a hero at all. I need to change. Midoriya felt his jaw drop. He honestly never expected Minta to even admit it, let alone say he needed to change. He was glad, though he was glad that Minta realized his flaws and wanted to get over them. So with a grin, he made a promise to the smaller teen. I'll help you in any way I can, and I support your decision. Minta smiled back. Thank you Midoriya, you're actually one of the people who inspired me to change. You're basically the model hero, like All Might too. Minta looked out into the distance, determination on his face. First thing when I get into class, I'm going to apologize to the girls. Midoriya nodded, eating a bite of cake. That's definitely a great place to start. Minta bit his lip. Midoriya, can you do me a favor to help with my change? Sure, anything to help, Midoriya cheered, while taking another bite. Can you help me destroy all the porn magazines I have in my room? What Minta said caused Midoriya grabbed his throat as he choked on his cake, eyes bulging in surprise. Midoriya yawned as he stepped into class behind Todoroki and Bakugou, blinking the sleep out of his eyes. After he had helped Minta with destroying the magazines plus a few other things, he had headed back to Bakugou's room to try and get some sleep. But to no avail. Deku-kun, are you alright? Midoriya nodded. Yeah, I'm fine. You're Araka, just having a little trouble waking up. He didn't notice the concerned glances shared between Bakugou and Todoroki, who were both worried. Midoriya, have you been getting enough sleep? You are recommended to have 8 hours of sleep every day, Ida asked, moving his hands frantically. Don't worry, I got enough sleep. I just need something to wake me up more, Midoriya replied as he sat down at his desk. He wasn't usually one to lie, but he didn't want to concern everyone. The bags under his eyes clearly betrayed him though, and his pale skin didn't help at all. Just as Todoroki was going to say something, the door slamming open drew everyone's attention to Minta. As he entered the room, scanned the classroom, then went up to the front of the room. He had been the last one to arrive, so he had 20 pairs of eyes staring at him. Minta glanced at Midoriya, who gave him a thumbs up before looking back out at his classmates. Taking a deep breath, he quickly bowed. I want to apologize for my past actions. I was a terrible person, especially to you girls. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I do want you to know I am working on becoming a better person worthy of being a hero, that is all. And with that, Minta went to his seat. Midoriya was glad that the smaller boy had remembered the speech that he helped him come up with, and was proud of him. It took a lot of guts to admit you are a terrible person in front of your classmates. Everyone else was in a stunned silence. They never ever expected that from Minta. They were shocked, but also pleasantly surprised to some extent. They all hoped that he was telling the truth. Midoriya knew He was being honest, though Minter really wanted to change and Midoriya would support him the entire way. So you think he was telling the truth? Bakugou asked as Midoriya and Todoroki walked hand in hand down the street. They were all on their way to visit Todoroki's mom. As a surprise, Midoriya and Bakugou had only met her once, and they wanted to get to know her more. Who minded? Todoroki asked. Yeah, Bakugou looked up at the sky. I believe he is. And I support his decision to change. Midoriya smiled happily, while swinging his arms. By the way, are we all going to work on the beach again tomorrow? We'd get our hours done faster if we did it during the week along with the weekend. Yeah, makes sense. It would be nice if we could use our quirks, though. Bakugou grumbled, subconsciously swinging his arm with Midoriya. I don't think that's a problem for Izuku, Todoroki said, also swinging his arm. Midoriya laughed. You have a point. I had to gain a lot of muscle to handle one for all, which means I got a lot of strength and endurance. Bakugou rolled his eyes. Whatever, nerd. Todoroki and Midoriya laughed at that, seeing how Bakugou was clearly jealous. Because of that, they failed to notice the person who was running toward them, until it was too late. The person ran smack into Midoriya. The papers they had going flying because Midoriya was still holding Bakugou and Todoroki's hands. They were pulled down with him. Midoriya sat up and rubbed his head, as the other person quickly grabbed all of their papers, apologizing profusely. I'm so sorry. I'm late for a meeting, so I was rushing while going over my notes, and I didn't see you three. And Midoriya grabbed the person's shoulder gently. Don't worry, we weren't paying attention either. More importantly, are you all right? The person nodded, quickly smiling at Midoriya. They had short blue hair, dark sunglasses, and were wearing a sweater and jeans. They didn't look particularly feminine or masculine. I'm fine. You're Katsuki. Bakugou, right? You're much nicer than what you appeared like during the sports festival. Midoriya raised an eyebrow in confusion. No, Izuku. Midoriya. But I thought he's Midoriya. The person pointed over to the side. Midoriya looked to see Shoto, and surprisingly himself, sitting to the side and looking around in confusion. Why is my body over there? Oh shoot, of course. Midoriya looked back at the person. I'm so sorry, my quirk activates sometimes whenever I get surprised or startled. I thought I got better at controlling it, but apparently not. They explained your quirk. They nodded, standing. My quirk is body switch. I'm afraid I accidentally switched your bodies. I can't reverse it, but it should only last for a few days. I have to go though, so see ya again. I'm really sorry. They waved as they ran off, leaving three confused teens behind. They ended up not going to visit Todoroki's mom, wanting to get their current situation sorted out. From what they could tell, Midoriya was now in Bakugou's body, Bakugou in Todoroki's, and Todoroki in Midoriya as well. This is definitely a problem. Todoroki finally spoke up. No shit, Sherlock, Bakugou yelled, sitting with his legs crossed in the grass, or Todoroki's legs. They said it should only last a few days, luckily. So I think we should all calm down. Midoriya said, a calm smile on his Bakugou's face. How the hell am I supposed to calm down? Bakugou yelled as he did. Flames erupted from his left side as ice started spreading across the ground on his right. It appears we now have each other's quirks too. I recommend cooling off, unless you want to set the park on fire, Todoroki said. Bakugou grumbled, but calmed down enough to let the flames extinguish themselves and ice to melt. All right, we need to go to Recovery Girl. She can help us, Midoriya concluded, and started standing up, only to be pulled down by Todoroki, or Bakugou in Todoroki's body weight. I want to see how long it takes people to notice. Todoroki nodded in agreement. Not usually one to prank, but this could be fun and provide everyone with a test. Wait, what? Midoriya looked at both of them in confusion. Well, act like each other and see how long it takes people to notice that we switched bodies. So you have to act like me, Deku, and Shoto has to act like you, which means you have to act like me, Katsuki. Do you think you can handle that? Todoroki smiled slightly in a challenging way. Of course I can, Bakugou yelled. Midoriya sighed. All right, but only for the rest of today and tomorrow. And Kek and Shoto never really yells, Bakugou growled, then tried his best to go silent. All right, but you have to yell and cuss. I think I can do that. Midoriya bit his lip. All right, but Shoto, you have to smile. Todoroki nodded and smiled slightly like this. No, you have to grin like this. Midoriya smiled happily. It was weird seeing that smile on Bakugou's face. Oh, Todoroki tried again, this time with a bigger smile. Is this good? Yeah, Midoriya cheered. And you also have to be more happy sounding. Yeah, Deku sounds happier than that. You need to be a cinnamon roll, basically, Bakugou explained. All right, Todoroki did his best. Midoriya smiled, then did his best Midoriya impression. I love you, Kekken. Bakugou blushed. Yeah, like that. He then looked at Midoriya, which was weird since he was looking at himself. Deku say fuck DDO. I have to, Midoriya asked, not wanting to swear. Yes, Todoroki and Bakugou answered at the same time. Midoriya sighed. Fuck. You also have to yell a lot, Bakugou said. He was actually doing pretty well at mimicking Todoroki. All right. I'll put on the Kakken charade when we get back to the dorms, Midoriya grumbled. With that, the three headed back to the dorms. Midoriya was still hesitant about the prank, but he decided to go along with it because his boyfriends wanted to. Their first obstacle emerged. though in the form of 𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗧𝗵𝗲 Midoriya was talking with Todoroki, not paying much attention. Kirishima wanted to talk to Bakugou, not him. He realized his mistake, though, when Bakugou elbowed him in the side. Midoriya looked at Kirishima. Hey Kiri, another elbow to the gut. Oh hey 𝐎𝐻𝗧𝗏 hair, what do you want? Bakugou was proud, and a little impressed by the accurate portrayal of himself by Midoriya. He just hoped that B didn't screw it up. Kirishima wrapped an arm around Midoriya's shoulders, pulling him down slightly. Midoriya almost fell, not used to being that tall or that light. Remembering to do what Bakugou would do, Midoriya did his best to scowl. But it didn't turn out the best. Oi, let Bakugou sucked in a breath, bit his lip, internally freaking out that he almost gave it away. Is there something you need with Katsuki? Yeah. Kirishima let go of Midoriya and grinned. We made plans on training today. Bakugou almost flinched at the look Midoriya gave him. He looked so panicked, like he knew that he wouldn't be able to pass off being Bakugou without his boyfriends nearby. Oh, can we train with you guys? A good hero always keeps in shape. Todoroki grinned, surprising Bakugou and Midoriya. They didn't expect Todoroki to pull it off that well. Kirishima grinned. Of course, right Katsuki? Midoriya nodded, not trusting himself to say anything. That was a bad move though, because it made Kirishima raise an eyebrow and placed a hand on Midoriya's shoulder. Are you alright bro? You're being really quiet. Midoriya clenched his fist and promised himself he would apologize later for what he was about to do. He slapped Kirishima's hand away and let tiny explosions go off. A fucking course. Alright, let's just go train now. To finish things off, Midoriya placed his hands in his pocket and glared the best he could. Kirishima blinked in surprise and glanced at Bakugou and Todoroki, who were proud of their cinnamon roll. Todoroki realized, though, that at this moment Midoriya would say something to reprimand Bakugou. Cat Kaken, that's not nice. He grabbed Midoriya's shoulder. Midoriya had to admit he was getting into his role as he rolled his eyes at Todoroki. Whatever Deku. Bakugou was so proud of his boyfriends. But he tried to control his face so that he wouldn't show it, which was hard. He had to ask Todoroki how he did it all the time. Kirishima laughed and shook his head. Come on, we need to get going before Aizawa makes us go back to the dorms. He then led the way to the training grounds, while the other three followed. Now usually Midoriya would walk in the middle, while Todoroki walked on his right and Bakugou on his left. Though sometimes on really hot days Todoroki and Bakugou would switch, so that Midoriya was closer to Todoroki's cold side. Midoriya himself was always in the middle. It was something everyone noticed. In fact, that's how they were walking now, though things were different now to others. It looked like Bakugou was in the middle, while Midoriya was on his right and Todoroki on his left. They may not have realized it, but Kirishima certainly noticed. Are you guys alright? Of course. Why do you ask? Todoroki asked. It was starting to get exhausting acting like Midoriya. He didn't know how he did it. 247 asking, because Bakugou is in the middle of you guys. Isn't Midoriya always in the middle? But I mean, so what? Maybe we wanted to change things up. Midoriya was making a mental tally of how many times he would need to apologize to Kirishima. Hey Midoriya. The four stopped to see 𝗵𝗲 running at them. They watched in confusion as he went up to Todoroki, who was still in Midoriya's body. Midoriya, can you help me out? I want to go over different ways I could use my quirk more effectively with you, and some social interaction help. Todoroki looked at his boyfriends in panic. He had no clue how to help 𝗵𝗲. I can't take it anymore. Midoriya threw his hands up in the air in frustration, then pointed at Todoroki. That's Shoto. He pointed at Bakugou. That's Kaken. Finally, he gestured to himself and Midoriya. We were hit with a body switch quirk, and we'll be like this for a few days. Bakugou facepalmed. Damn it, Deku. You ruined the prank. Todoroki let out a sigh of relief and grabbed his chest. I didn't know how much longer I could pretend to be literal sunshine. Wait, what? 𝗵𝗲 looked between them in confusion. Kirishima was pretty much the same way, processing the new information. Wait, does that mean Midoriya is in Katsuki's body, Katsuki is in Todoroki's body, and Todoroki is in Midoriya's body? Yes. And I'm so sorry for the mean things I said. Midoriya confirmed, then apologized. Kirishima chuckled. It's alright. You did a pretty good job of pretending to be Katsuki. You all did pretty good actually. Kirishima then perked up, grinning. You know, if we let the whole class in on this, we could probably pull a prank on the teachers. It would be hilarious. Midoriya groaned. I don't like acting like Kaken though. Don't pretend to be like me then. Well, not fully, just enough so you pass as me, but also act just enough like yourself to make the teachers question you. Like, don't swear or yell, but otherwise act and talk like me. Bakugou was grinning ear to ear, which looked really creepy with Todoroki's face. Fine, but I expect to be rewarded later. Midoriya pouted, which looked ridiculously cute. Even though it was Bakugou's body, he got two sounds of agreement in response. Anyway, I'm going to go help 𝗵𝗲. You three have fun training and testing out your new powers. Shoto, please try not to break my arms, because I won't be able to use them. If I break the 2 or 3 more times, it'll be care. Todoroki looked at Midoriya in confusion. Wait, what do you mean by not being able to use them? Midoriya panicked slightly and picked up 𝗵𝗲. I'll tell you later. He then sprinted off, a confused grape in his hands. Bakugou and Todoroki shared a look that said Midoriya would definitely have some questions to answer later. Bakugou, Todoroki, and Midoriya were finally together again in Bakuga's room. After doing their separate things, the news had spread in the dorm about the body switch, so now their phones were blowing up with people asking questions. The three teens weren't paying attention though. Instead, Bakugou and Todoroki were sitting on either side of Midoriya on the couch, basically trapping him there. Midoriya was looking down, knowing what was coming, but not wanting to deal with it. Deku, what did you mean that you wouldn't be able to use your arms anymore? If you broke them again? Bakugou finally asked. Midoriya sighed, gripping the edge of the couch. He might as well get it over with. During the training camp, remember how beat up I was? Well, I had to use a lot more of one for all than my body could handle to defeat a villain attacking Kota. While I was at the hospital, the doctor told me that my arms could be permanently damaged. With a few more nasty breaks, like I would lose function in them. So I have to be a lot more careful. Now, no more serious breaks. It's not that big of a deal, though I just need to get more control of one for all. Bakugou and Todoroki shared a look, trying to process the information they were given. They had to make sure Midoriya never needed to break his arms again. It's alright, though I actually can use 10 of one for all now, though it should be enough to deal with most enemies, though it won't be a one-shot knockout. Midoriya smiled at the two on either side of him. Todoroki sighed. Alright, well, make sure that you never need to use more than 10 till you're ready. Bakugou nodded. Yet I'll beat up anyone that tries to mess with us again. Midoriya giggled, which sounded weird with Bakuga's voice. Okay, he kissed Bakugou and Todoroki's cheeks. I love you too. Todoroki smiled. We love you too. Bakugou smirked. Yeah. And now that we got that out of the way, Shoto, and I talked about what your reward will be. Midoriya laughed. I wasn't being serious about that. But in guessing Katsuden, that was what his rewards tended to be with Bakugou and Todoroki. Bakugou and Todoroki smirked, which was a little weird for Midoriya, who was seeing his and Todoroki's faces. Smirking Todoroki then moved to straddle Midoriya, which was even weirder for the usually green-haired boy. Just imagine seeing your own body sitting on you in a sexual way. Weird, right? We were thinking something a little more exciting. Bakugou whispered into Midoriya's ear. Midoriya turned bright red. Oh, he was cut off by Todoroki kissing him. Midoriya gasped in surprise, which let Todoroki deepen the kiss. Midoriya was just starting to melt into the kiss when a sudden banging on the door caused the three boys to jump in surprise and fall off the couch. Deku, Bakugou, Todoroki, are you guys in there? We heard a thud. None other than Uraraka's voice came through the door, irritating two of the three boyfriends. While the other jumped up to answer the door, Midoriya made sure he looked well. Bakuga's body looked presentable before opening up the door. Hey Ochako. He smiled happily. Uraraka flinched slightly in surprise. Yeah, you three definitely switched bodies. Deku, I'm guessing. Midoriya nodded. Yeah. I know it's pretty weird, but it's only for a few days. Midoriya looked around to also see Ida and Asui. Hey guys. Well, it's good to know that it wasn't that bad of a quirk that affected you this time. And it's only temporary, correct? Ida asked. Midoriya nodded again. It should only last a few days at least. That's what the person who did this said. They were running late for a meeting and ran into us, which startled them into using their quirk. It's not too bad, though. Well, alright, we were just making sure you guys were alright. Uraraka said. Midoriya smiled happily again. Thank you for that. It's getting late though, and I'm pretty tired, so we'll talk in the morning, alright? Yeah, Uraraka cheered. Night guys. Midoriya closed the door after getting goodbyes from the three outside. When he turned around, though, he was shocked to see Bakugou and Todoroki right behind him. Are they gone now? Todoroki asked. Yes, Midoriya eyed them suspiciously. Good, Bakugou said before grabbing Midoriya's arm and dragging him toward the bed. Todoroki, following Midoriya, internally groaned. He didn't want to have to act like Bakugou again, but he wanted to make his boyfriends happy, and it really wasn't anything too bad. He didn't have to swear or yell this time, at least. He went to sit in his usual seat, but Ishido grabbed his arm. Your seat is over here for now, she said in a sing-song voice as she dragged Midoriya to Bakuga's seat. Midoriya was just now starting to remember how much the Baka squad loved pranks. Midoriya sat down at Bakuga's desk and saw Todoroki sitting at his and Bakugou sitting in Todoroki's. Zero came over and tapped Midoriya's shoulder. You need to put your feet up on the desk. Midoriya felt dirty, as he did as he was told, putting his feet on the desk and leaning back. Like this? Perfect. Zero grinned. Now just remember, you don't have to yell or swear, but otherwise act like Bakugou. Uraraka and Ida are helping Todoroki right now, while Yaoyorozu is helping Bakugou. Mina, Ijuru, Denki, and I will be helping you. Hey, Aizawa is coming. Quick, pretend to yell at me. Midoriya Kaminari said, moving next to Midoriya. Said boy sighed and tried to remember how Bakugou would yell at Kaminari. He then got up and grabbed the front of Kaminari's shirt with one hand while holding his other hand out and letting it spark. What did you just say? Everyone in class mentally agreed. It was weird to see Bakugou threaten someone without yelling or swearing. But this was Midoriya in Bakuga's body, of course. It wouldn't be the same. Nothing seemed that unusual though to Aizawa as he walked into class, immediately focusing on who he thought was Bakugou. Bakugou, stop threatening Kaminari and sit down. He put his things on the podium. Not wanting to deal with these things today, Midoriya made a fake sound of annoyance and gently pushed Kaminari away, who over-exaggerated being pushed and almost fell. Midoriya then sat down like he normally would. But no one corrected him this time. Aizawa looked out over his students when everyone had sat down. Something seemed off, but he couldn't tell what. He decided to ignore it, and instead continued with his lessons. All right. This is the last day we'll be analyzing each other's quirks. Bakugou stand and tell everyone about Sato's quirk. Now when Aizawa called on who he thought was Bakugou, he expected something decent, but not the best, especially with an analysis on someone who the blonde didn't really interact with. When he instead received a very detailed report on Sato's quirk, he knew something was up. Bakugou, did you copy off Midoriya? Aizawa narrowed his eyes. When everyone in class seemed to tense, did his whole class cheat off Midoriya? Is that why everyone tensed? Kirishima, tell me about Shoji's quirk. Kirishima did as asked. But it definitely wasn't the level that would suggest he copied Aizawa, then set his sights on who he thought was Todoroki. Todoroki, tell me about Minato's quirk. Todoroki stood and had a frustrated look. That wasn't something Aizawa expected. He has sticky balls on the top of his head that stick to everything. That was something he expected from Bakugou. Aizawa was so confused on what was going on, but refused to let it show. Midoriya, tell me about Todoroki's quirk. In that instance, several students had to cover their mouths to keep from laughing. Some failed. Aizawa couldn't keep the look of confusion off of his face any longer. I'm not in the mood for this. Aizawa grabbed his sleeping bag and got inside it, texting All Might to come take over for him. He did not want to deal with this nonsense anymore. Midoriya looked over at Todoroki and Bakugou, smiling. He had to admit, it was a little fun trolling his teacher like this. He tensed though when All Might stepped in, looking around in confusion. Aizawa told me I needed to take over because things were getting confusing. He phrased it like a question, unsure of the situation. We were just going over each other's quirks. I don't know why that confused him, Todoroki said with his best Midoriya impression. Well, I guess we'll continue with that. Then All Might went up to the podium, avoiding a now sleeping Aizawa. Izuku, why don't you start off? Todoroki disguised as Midoriya stood. All right. Whose quirk should I analyze? All Might scanned the students. How about Ioma? Todoroki looked over at the blonde, who was somehow sparkling. He can shoot lasers out of his stomach. All Might raised an eyebrow when he didn't continue anything else. Todoroki tilted his head slightly and thought he gets stomach aches if he uses it for too long. Todoroki then sat down. Done speaking, the former pro hero stared at him in concern. To him, it looked Midoriya was sitting with a blank expression, something Todoroki would do. Izuku, are you all right? Kirishima slapped a hand over Midoriya's mouth before he could answer and give away the prank. What are you talking about? All Might, he is acting like he normally does. Bakugou then said, only a slight bit of emotion in his voice and on his face to throw off the adult. All Might's sweat dropped. All right then. He could see what Aizawa meant. Meanwhile, Midoriya was close to crying. He didn't know how much longer he could do this to him. It felt like he was playing a prank on a parent, which was basically what he was doing. Ishido could see it in his eyes and made sure to block him from All Might's view. That didn't matter though. When All Might looked for who he thought was Bakugou, he went over, while the class had started to talk to themselves, looking concerned. Bakugou, is there something wrong with Todoroki and Izuku? It seems like something is off about them. Midoriya could only squeak out a yes before the hands of the Baka squad. Bakugou and Todoroki covered his mouth. Midoriya looked ready to burst, which made everyone start to pull him away from the adult before All Might could even ask anything else. Though Midoriya broke free of everyone's grasp, our bodies, he was tackled to the ground by the people who had tried to hold him back. All Might had no clue if he should intervene or not. It seemed to him like Bakugou wanted to tell him something the others didn't want anyone to know. He was taken aback though when he saw Todoroki look down and yell, shut up Deku. Everyone in the pile and a few others in the classroom froze. Bakugou realized his mistake too late and facepalmed. Shit, young Bakugou. All Might was seriously confused. Yes, we got hit by a quirk that switched our bodies. They wanted to prank all the teachers, and I tried to go along to make everyone happy. But I feel so bad lying to you. And Midoriya cut himself off with gross sobbing. It wasn't as powerful as it normally would be since it was Bakugou's body, but it was still a lot. And that's Izuku, All Might muttered before shaking his head. Did a villain do this? No, we were walking and a person bumped into us. They accidentally used their quirk, and according to them, it will reverse itself in a few days, Todoroki explained in his deadpan voice and blank face. It was weird for everyone to hear and see it come from Midoriya's body. I should expel you all, Aizawa muttered from his sleeping bag, scaring most of the students. He was just mostly upset that he had been fooled though. Well, seeing as there is nothing we can really do about this, I guess we'll just continue as normal. I'll go inform the other teachers and the principal of this, All Might said before leaving. Aizawa slowly got up. Everyone back to your seats. Midoriya, Bakugou, and Todoroki, sit in your own seat. Though so I won't get mixed up, and everyone did just that, not knowing that soon they would be introduced to a new horror that lies just around the corner. 2 days had passed since Bakugou, Todoroki, and Midoriya got body switched. After they had pranked the teachers, Aizawa had threatened to add on to their community service time if they tried anything like that again. So the three mostly behaved for the rest of the day, and did their jobs. When they went to the beach that day, Todoroki, being in Midoriya's body, found that things were way easier. Midoriya, on the other hand, had found that things were way harder. Wow, Kaken, you really need to work out more. That of course pissed off Bakugou, who yelled about Todoroki being even weaker, and that he could easily dominate Midoriya in more ways than one, much to Midoriya's embarrassment and the enjoyment of the Baka squad plus Uraraka. After working till the sun was about to set, everyone headed home to their dorms and to their class. The next day they were in for a real surprise though when they arrived to class. However, they were in for one of the worst days of their life. Aizawa glared slightly at his class from inside his sleeping bag. Due to some unexpected changes to Japan's education requirements, we have to do a home ec class, so today we are going to one of the kitchens set up for this situation. He then proceeded to start to inch toward the door, clearly not wanting to do this. The entire class minus Sato was sorta dreading this, since most of them sucked at cooking and others didn't want to cook for a grade. Everyone got up though and followed Aizawa, as he moved surprisingly fast for someone who was inching along in a sleeping bag. Once they reached the kitchen, Aizawa made everyone go to their own station before he explained what they were doing. Midoriya, Bakugou, and Todoroki chose stations near each other, while their friends got ones around them. Aizawa watched, and as soon as everyone was settled, started to speak. Today, you will be making a dessert that represents your hero selves. It can be a cupcake, a brownie, a cake, or anything else that classifies as a dessert. And I will be in charge of tasting them, so try not to make anything poisonous. You have 2 hours. Aizawa set an alarm, then rolled over and went to sleep. The class looked at each other in concern before dashing to grab ingredients and talk to Sato. Bakugou, for as good as he was at cooking, sucked at baking. And he wasn't the best with art either, so he found himself screwed for the most part. That didn't stop him from trying though, or anyone else. Everyone tried their hardest on this. Most people had decided to make cupcakes, including Midoriya. A few like Todoroki and Takoyami went with brownies. Bakugou decided go big or go home and decided on a cake, along with Sato, Yaoyorozu, and Mineta both decided on pies. Soon the room was a mess. Almost every surface was covered in some sort of ingredient or mix. Midoriya surprised himself with how well he was doing after he had pulled his cupcake out of the oven and found that it actually looked good. He made green frosting and went to work decorating. Todoroki was doing terribly. He had tried to use his flames to cook his brownie, only to remember that he didn't have his flames at the moment. So he asked Bakugou to cook them. Bakugou had yelled at him, though, that he should cook it in an oven, and refused. Then he went to Midoriya, who couldn't turn down Todoroki. Even if he was in the usually smaller boy's body, Midoriya had tried to make small explosions to just heat up the brownie, but the explosion was a tad too big and startled everyone as it melted the tray Todoroki was using and part of the counter. The brownie itself was burnt to a crisp. But Todoroki had said it was perfect. The rest of the class considered going and getting recovery girl in case Aizawa actually started dying. Midoriya and Todoroki had been lectured by Bakugou, which was really weird since he was in Todoroki's body, then continued on their treats. In the end, everyone finished just before the 2-hour timer went off and lined their treats up on a counter for Aizawa to look over. Aizawa, who had slept through Midoriya's explosion, awoke as soon as the timer went off and sat up. One look at the desserts, and he muttered out, "I'm going to die." Everyone's sweat dropped as he moved over to the treats and looked them over. The class mostly succeeded in making them represent themselves, but the way Aoyama's seemed to sparkle with glitter worried Aizawa. Sighing heavily and moving out of his sleeping bag, Aizawa grabbed a fork and took a piece of Aoyama's cupcake. "Don't worry, the glitter is to make you shine on the inside," Aoyama announced, sparkling just like his cupcake. "I'm going to die," Aizawa repeated before taking a bite. Almost immediately, he looked like he was about to puke, so Midoriya grabbed a trash can and hurried over to Aizawa, who took the trash can and spit out the cupcake. "Thank you, Midoriya." Aoyama sweat dropped as Aizawa pushed the rest of the cupcake in the trash. "Next time, use edible glitter," he groaned out. Next up was Ishido, whose cupcake appeared to be strawberry with pink frosting. Purple and green frosting was also splotched on, and candy horns were added to the top. What worried Aizawa most though is that the cupcake appeared to be melting. "Ishido, did you add your acid to this?" Maybe said girl admitted, looking to the side while playing with the hem of her skirt. Aizawa didn't even risk it and threw the cupcake in the trash. Going down the line, most of the desserts ended up in the trash. They all looked all right, but most of them tasted terrible till he got to Sato's cake. That was it. Looked like Sato in cake form, and it tasted great. He actually gave the student a thumbs up to everyone's surprise. After that though, most of them tasted terrible again. Takoyami's actually wasn't too bad, but it wasn't the best either. Then there was Todoroki's. It had light blue frosting and food dye on the right side and red frosting on the left. The frosting was sloppy though and mixed together at some points. There were also random splotches of food dye pooled in the frosting. What he could see of the brownie looked charred. Aizawa hesitantly cut through the brownie. Tried to, at least it took him a moment to finally cut it. While the outside might have been charred, the inside was gooey and undercooked. Without a word, the teacher slid it into the trash. Not trusting it, 𝐒𝐩𝐽's was not even there. "𝐒𝐻𝐽, where is your dessert? It's invisible like me." Aizawa opened his mouth, then closed it. I'll give you an adjust because that is a good answer. And it saves me from almost dying for a moment. Next was Bakugou, which well the presentation was alright. It sorta resembled the explosive student when Aizawa tried to cut into the cake. Though it was almost as hard as Todoroki's see it's tough like me. You can tell it's strong, Bakugou boasted. But his boyfriends could see through his bullshit. Aizawa hesitantly cut off a slice and bit into it. He gagged and spit into the trash, then threw the slice and cake into it. Bakugou growled and started to angrily sulk. Midoriya patted his back and whispered reassuring things to him. Aizawa almost cried in happiness when he saw Midoriya's cupcake, which looked almost as good as Sato's cake. It was cute how the boy had added little green candy ears to the cupcake, which made it look like a bunny biting into it. Aizawa found that it actually tasted good. He let out a sigh of relief. Midoriya, you and Sato are my favorite students right now. Midoriya and Sato both blushed slightly at that out of embarrassment and pride. Midoriya stuttered out, "Well, I used to help my mom bake a lot when I was younger. I guess I kinda have muscle memory from that. And I bake a lot to help with my quirk. So this is an everyday thing for me," Sato added. Aizawa nodded. He then went on to mind his pie, which had a bunch of blackberries on top to resemble the boy's hair. Aizawa found that the pie was overwhelmingly sweet, too much sugar, otherwise it wasn't the worst. Maita let out a sigh of relief, glad that his wasn't the worst. Yaoyorozu's pie didn't really look like her at all, it just looked like a normal apple pie. Aizawa tried it to find that it was average tasting. "Did you make this with your quirk?" "Yes," Yaoyorozu answered. Aizawa sighed. "Next time, don't use your quirk." Finally was Shinsu, who had made some cookies. It had purple frosting to resemble his hair, and was chocolate chip. It was average tasting, and the frosting tasted a little too much like the food dye. Aizawa looked up at his class. "Out of all of you, only Midoriya, Sato, Hagakure, and Shinso pass. Still, since you all participated for the most part." He sent a look at Hagakure and Yaoyorozu. "We are officially done with this. Clean up your messes, and meet me back in the classroom." With that, he grabbed his sleeping bag and left. Everyone let out a sigh, glad that it was all over. Though they should appreciate the somewhat normalcy. While it lasted, their worlds would later be turned upside down, and it all boiled down to one thing: Izuku Midoriya. And the power he had. Midoriya watched with worry as his boyfriend sulked on the couch in Bakugou's room. They had had their bodies back since the day after the cooking incident. But at the moment they both looked like Midoriya himself. When he was in a bad mood, he had tried to comfort them. But it didn't help that they were the only ones out of class 1 to not get their provisional licenses, so not knowing what to do, he just cleaned up around Bakugou's dorm. Just as he was about to work up the courage to say something, though, Bakugou jumped up. "We're going on a date," he yelled, leaving no room for argument. "A date? Where?" Midoriya asked, startled by Bakugou's outburst. "ID. Rather stay here," Todoroki muttered. "Like hell. Well, let you stay here. We're going to celebrate shitty Deku getting his license." WWE don't need to do that. The class already went out and celebrated, and Midoriya was shut up by a pair of aggressive lips on his own. Bakugou pulled back quickly with his hands. Having little explosions. "We're celebrating just you, me, and half." Bakugou looked over his shoulder at Todoroki. "Right, Shoto?" Todoroki sighed and stood. "I suppose it would be selfish of us to ignore Izuku's victory just because we failed." "Exactly." Bakugou grinned triumphantly. Midoriya shook his head. "Really, there is no need. It would feel like rubbing it in your faces that I..." He stopped speaking when he saw that Bakugou was glaring at him, while Todoroki was giving him a blank stare. "Izuku, what would you do if our situations were reversed? Would you not want to celebrate us getting our licenses, even if you didn't get one?" Todoroki asked, moving toward Midoriya. Midoriya looked at the floor, fiddling with the hem of his shirt. "No. I would want to take you guys out to celebrate." "Then we're celebrating," Bakugou yelled. "But it's different," Midoriya mumbled, hoping his boyfriends wouldn't hear. But with his luck, they did. "How the fuck is it different?" "I agree with Katsuki. How is it different?" Midoriya was turning red and glanced at his boyfriends with a slight pout, knowing they were right, but still arguing because it was only me," Bakugou growled. "So what you're saying is, if it was only me, or only Shoto, you wouldn't celebrate?" "No. I would still celebrate if only one of you got your license." Midoriya was finding it harder and harder to argue against his boyfriends. "What if it was you and I, or you and Katsuki? Would you still celebrate?" "Well, yes. I would celebrate." Midoriya was feeling smaller than ever as his boyfriends moved right in front of him. "So you're saying that the reason you don't want to celebrate," Todoroki started, "is because it was you that got your license?" Bakugou finished. Midoriya stared at the ground, knowing he was logically defeated. That didn't stop him, though, from mumbling out a small "yes, damn it, Deku." Bakugou punched the wall next to Midoriya. The smaller boy hadn't even realized that he had been backed up against a wall. "Are you trying to say that in your eyes you don't matter compared to us?" Todoroki asked, putting a hand on Midoriya's shoulder. Midoriya looked between Bakugou's angry expression and Todoroki's cold face. He could see that they both were actually concerned. They were just bad at showing it. They were both obviously angry, though not at Midoriya himself, but his mindset. With all that, the fact that he didn't want to talk about this and how his boyfriends were getting very close to him. Midoriya couldn't help but panic. Activating his quirk, Midoriya broke away from his boyfriends and rushed to the window. Not stopping, he quickly jumped through the window, his boyfriend shouts of surprise following him as he landed with a roll to break his fall. After sparing a glance up at the window to see Bakugou and Todoroki looking at him, Midoriya sprinted away. Not really paying attention to where he was going, he ran and ran, not stopping till he felt fire in his lungs. Slowing to a stop, Midoriya panted and leaned against a wall, trying to catch his breath. Izuku. Midoriya looked up and saw his mother and All Might looking at him with worry. It was then he had realized that he ended up at his old apartment. Izuku, are you all right? Inko bent down to lay a hand on Midoriya's back, looking over him to see if he was injured. Midoriya hugged his mom, starting to cry a little. All Might ushered the mother and son inside as Inko fretted and Midoriya cried. All three of them settled down on the couch. As Inko tried to get her son to talk about what was wrong, Midoriya finally calmed down enough to speak. 𝐒𝐻𝐽 and 𝐬𝐻𝐼 wanted to go on a date to celebrate me getting my license. What's wrong about that? All Might asked. Well, I didn't want to. I felt bad because he started to tear up again. Is it because they were the only ones to not get their licenses? Inko asked, rubbing his back. Midoriya nodded. They started questioning me about it and eventually asked if it was because it was only me that got my license. I said yes, because it was true. If only one of them got it, I would still celebrate. If both of them got it and I didn't, I would still celebrate. If one of them and I got it, I would still celebrate. It's different since it's just me, though. I feel so bad and I don't want to make it seem like I'm rubbing it in that I got my license. While they didn't, he started crying by the end of his rant, causing Inko and All Might to hold him close. They both exchanged worried looks. Midoriya. All Might started but stopped when he noticed blood. He went pale when he realized Midoriya was bleeding. He gently pushed the boy back so he could look him over. What happened? Where did all those cuts come from? Inko just now noticed the cuts too, thanks to All Might pointing it out. She went pale and started frantically looking at all the cuts, surprised that she didn't notice earlier. Midoriya sheepishly rubbed the back of his neck. Well, after Kakin and Todoroki asked if I thought I didn't matter compared to them, I became overwhelmed. It didn't help that they had me cornered against a wall, so I kinda panicked and jumped through the window. Midoriya trailed off at the looks he was getting from his mom, and All Might Inko sighed, shaking her head. I'll go get the first aid kit. She stood and went to the bathroom. Izuku. Midoriya looked at All Might, not liking the look he was giving him. Yes. Do you think that you don't matter compared to Todoroki and Bakugou? All Might asked, looking Midoriya in the eyes. Well, it's not that I don't matter, it's just, well, I think their needs and wants matter more. Midoriya hesitantly answered, knowing that logically it was wrong, but it felt right in his heart. Izuku, your needs and wants are just as important as theirs are. All Might said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Toshinori's right. I don't know why you think that their needs and wants are more important, but 𝐻𝗧𝗧 not. It can lead to an unhealthy relationship if you keep that mentality. Inko came back with the first aid kit and started cleaning Midoriya's cuts. And next time, please use the door. It's not exactly safe to jump through windows. All Might added, patting Midoriya's head. Midoriya sighed. I know. And I know I shouldn't think that their needs and wants are more important, but in my heart, I feel like they are. Toshinori smiled slightly. Well, I guess that is something that happens when you're in love. He glanced at Inko, who was now bandaging up Midoriya's cuts. Inko nodded. Love can make you think and do things that aren't necessarily right, but you have to work through that. I know that you feel like they Katsuki and Shoto matter more, but you need to remember that you all matter equally. Inko bandaged the last cut and closed the kit before sitting back on the couch. And while they shouldn't have cornered you, I know that Katsuki and Shoto were just trying to make you see that you should see yourself equally. Inko is right, so go on that date with them. Plus, I have a feeling that it will help them feel better too. Toshinori smiled at Midoriya. Midoriya nodded, tearing up slightly. He then laughed lightly. I guess I was pretty foolish back there. I need to go. Paul. A loud knocking on the door cut him off. The three looked at the door, already knowing who it was coming. Inko called. She smiled at Midoriya. Looks like they just can't stay away. The door opened, and two people stepped in. Well, more like stumbled in. One of them was heavily bleeding while leaning against the other, while said other held them close. Please help. Midoriya jumped up, rushing forward to help Emiko with Katsumi. He grabbed the injured girl and moved her to the couch as Toshinori and Inko jumped up. She was bleeding badly from several cuts and had a few bruises and burns. Emiko moved next to Katsumi and sat by her legs. She also had some cuts and bruises, but nothing too bad. We were walking and got ambushed by Toga. She figured out Hito's real identity. Even though she gave them a fake name, Hitori Nakamura, she tried to get Hito to come back, but she refused. And then Emiko started sobbing. Unable to continue, Katsumi groaned, on the verge of passing out. We escaped barely. I spotted you entering your mother's apartment. Please help Emiko. Her eyes closed, and she stilled. Emiko gasped and shook her girlfriend Hito. Hito Hitomi. The other girl didn't respond. She didn't even breath. Midoriya looked back at his mother and Toshinori, who had been frozen with shock this entire time. Mom, we need to help. Do CPR. That spurred Inko into motion as she moved Emiko aside and started performing CPR. Midoriya, take her into your room and treat her with the other first aid kit. Toshinori, help me with this one. The two did what she asked. Midoriya barely managed to pull a screaming and sobbing Emiko into his room and sit her on his bed. Emiko, Hitomi will be fine as long as you let my mom work on her. For now, just stay here and let me take care of your injuries. All right. Emiko could only sob into her hands as she nodded slightly. But it was good enough for Midoriya. He quickly got the second first aid kit and brought it back to his room, where he quietly started cleaning Emiko's cuts. The only sound in the room was the girl's sobs. Midoriya finished patching her up, then moved onto the bed next to her, gently rubbing Emiko's back. The girl only turned to sob into his chest. Midoriya didn't know how long they stayed like that, but he looked up at the sound of a door opening. He was slightly surprised to see Bakugou stepping into his room, closing the door behind him. He moved over to Midoriya's bed and sat next to him. Emiko looked up, and seeing it wasn't someone with news about Hitomi, went back to crying into Midoriya's chest. Bakugou placed a hand on Midoriya's shoulder in comfort. Shoto is helping Auntie, and All Might with Mimesis. Auntie sent me in here since I couldn't help. She did say to tell you that they got her breathing again. Emiko perked up and looked at Bakugou. Is she going to live? Bakugou nodded. With Auntie, All Might, and Shoto helping her, no doubt about it. Emiko sighed in relief and fell back onto Midoriya's bed, apparently having cried most of her sadness out. Hito took a lot of hits for me. Toga tried to attack me to make Hito feel worse. Then another guy, I'm assuming one of Toga's friends, showed up. They were able to throw fireballs. I tried to help fight, but it was hard when Hito kept jumping in front of me to take the attacks. I would have been fine. I could have summoned my tank or a big sword or something, but Midoriya nodded. She probably didn't want you to get hurt because she saw it as it being her fault. I would have done the same in her position. If it were Kakin or Shoto, like hell I'd let you do that. Bakugou yelled. And we still have to talk about you jumping out the window and not thinking that you matter as much as us. Midoriya sighed. All right. But later, when everyone has settled down, Bakugou nodded. The three sat in silence. After that tension in the air, Emiko occasionally started crying again, but didn't sob like earlier. Midoriya leaned on Bakugou as he went over his old comics that he didn't bring with him to the dorms. He basically had them memorized, but he needed something to do, and he didn't feel like talking. Finally, after what seemed like hours, there was a knock on the door that made all three of them sit up. Todoroki opened the door and glanced at Emiko. Inko is done. You can come see her now if you want. Emiko jumped up and practically pushed Todoroki out of the way to get to her girlfriend. Midoriya smiled sadly and also got up, Bakugou following. The two with Todoroki went to the living room to see Emiko kneeling by the couch, crying happily. Thank you so much. I don't know what I would do if she. Emiko started crying more. Inko kneeled down and patted her head in a motherly way. It was difficult, and she really needs to go to a hospital. But shall live. Midoriya sighed in relief and sat on the floor near Emiko. Sorry if this is too soon, but what exactly happened? Emiko wiped her eyes. It's fine. Hito's alive, and that's all that matters. She took a deep breath to calm herself. We were on our weekly date when Toga ambushed us. She wanted Hito to come back to the League of Villains. From what I could tell, Hito declined and Toga attacked. At first Hito was winning, but then a man came out of nowhere and grabbed me, distracting Hito long enough for Toga to cut her. I summoned my tank to get away from him, since it's the best thing I got for defense. Then the guy started throwing fireballs and Hito tried to defend me. It was hard to fight against the two of them. While defending me, I got cut a little bit, but Hito got the most of it. Finally, I summoned a bigger tank for both of us, which uses up more of my energy, but we managed to get away. I was going to take her to the hospital, but then she spotted you and demanded that we follow you in here. Emiko finished stroking Hito's head. Wait. League of Villains? Does that mean Toshinori looked at Midoriya for an explanation? Hitomi or Mimesis was a part of the love you fought her. Remember anyway. She took a liking to me because Stain said I was a true hero. She's been helping me for a while. The day Todoroki and Bakugou were in the infirmary, she came by and said she helped take care of that one villain and left the league after you beat all for one. Emiko is her girlfriend. She is trying to be a hero, but loves Hitomi too much to turn her in or anything. Emiko made Hitomi promise not to murder anyone, and so far Hitomi hasn't broken that promise. Midoriya explained. Hito said that she views Izuku as a little brother. Just before we were attacked, she really is a nice person. Her parents were heroes who weren't that popular and got murdered. They didn't even get their names mentioned, but they were really great, so Hito got mad that they weren't even given names in the news when they died, yet heroes like Endeavor get praised. She really never has killed anyone, so please don't turn her in. Emiko looked at Toshinori and Inko. Sadly, Toshinori was having an internal struggle at the moment. His basically son and a UA student were currently begging him not to turn in a wanted villain. And while he wasn't a hero anymore, he was still a law-abiding citizen. She did leave the love though, and was now kinda dedicated to protecting his basically son. It was Inko, though, that pushed him over. How could I? She's heavily injured, and from what you two said, she is trying to protect Izuku. I can't possibly turn her in, 𝐭 said, staring at the girl in question. Toshinori groaned. All right, I won't turn her in either. Emiko and Midoriya both cheered. Bakugou and Todoroki looked at Midoriya fondly, finding him adorable. Oi, now that that's out of the way and everyone is happy again, Shoto. And I have to talk to Deku, Bakugou said, gesturing for Midoriya to come with them. Midoriya gulped and stood up. He glanced at his mom and Toshinori, who gave him reassuring smiles. Midoriya smiled back, then followed his boyfriends to his room to talk. Midoriya sat down on the bed between Bakugou and Todoroki. He glanced at both of them and saw that they wanted to say something, but he had something he needed to say first. Before you say anything, I'm sorry for jumping out of the window. I panicked because you two had me kinda cornered to answer your earlier question. Though I don't think that I don't matter compared to you two. I do, however, feel like your needs and wants are more important. And yes, I know logically that's not true, but I still feel like it, Midoriya confessed. He was staring at his feet, the whole time nervous about his boyfriend's reactions. Izuku, we feel like that too. You need to realize, though, that all our needs are equally important. Plus, we want to take you out on a date. Shoto kissed Midoriya's forehead. Midoriya nodded. All right, where are we going? It's going to be a fucking surprise. Now Deku. Bakugou smirked. Revenge for scaring us by jumping out my fucking window. Midoriya gasped. I'm so sorry about that. I should have at least opened the window. Bakugou facepalmed. Of course, you would care more about the window itself than the fact that you got all cut up from jumping out of the window. Todoroki shook his head. Momo said she'll take care of it. I texted her earlier. For now, just worry about your injuries and get ready for an amazing date. You know, when you said we were going on a date, I thought you meant to an amusement park or to dinner. But this is just— Midoriya excitedly gestured at the building in front of them. This is just amazing. Todoroki and Bakugou had gotten tickets for this year's Hirokin. They knew how much Midoriya had wanted to go, so they bought 3-day passes for Friday and the weekend. It was pretty much Midoriya's dream come true, especially since they had a mystery big shot hero coming this year. We brought bags and money too, so let us know if you want any merchandise, Todoroki mentioned, holding up an empty All Might bag. Midoriya pouted slightly. You two bought the tickets though. I can pay for any merchandise I want to get. Shut it, Deku. We're celebrating you getting your license, so we're paying. Bakugou started walking ahead of the two, expecting them to follow. They did, but Midoriya was still pouting. But you two pay for almost everything on all our dates because we want to. Todoroki gently took Midoriya's left hand, lacing their fingers. Bakugou had grabbed Midoriya's right hand, looking at a map with his free hand. Midoriya just sighed and shook his head, holding both of their hands. All right. He decided that if he wanted something, he would just have to sneak off to buy it. It would be hard, but it was worth it. So where should we go first? Bakugou asked, showing Midoriya the map. Midoriya furrowed his brows and thought, well, Mt. Lady is here with a booth, so I wanted to talk to her. I hadn't had the chance to thank her for stopping the villains from reaching us during our escape. Oh yeah, that tall lady, right? Bakugou studied the map. She's right at the entrance. Midoriya smiled. Then let's go. He excitedly dragged his two boyfriends through the doors, showing security their badges before making their way over to the booth decorated with Mt. Lady stuff. There was a bit of a crowd, but soon they dispersed, leaving the boyfriends with the new hero. Hi, Mt. Lady. Midoriya smiled happily at the woman in front of him. Oh, you're that Midoriya kid? Hi. She grinned and leaned forward. Yeah, thank you for helping rescue me. When the villains kidnapped me, I was wondering if you could hold on. Midoriya dug through his bag and pulled out a brand new notebook, flipping it to the second page. Can you please sign this? He looked at Mt. Lady excitedly. Of course. Mt. Lady took the notebook and quickly signed it, her signature taking up the entire page. So do you come here every year? Well, every year I can afford it, Midoriya answered, rubbing the back of his head sheepishly. This year my boyfriends— Midoriya gestured at Bakugou — and Todoroki paid for me since I got my provisional license. Mt. Lady almost dropped the notebook out of shock. You're only a first year, right? And you already got your license? She laughed slightly. Well, I guess it makes sense since you're practically All Might's son. Now still, that's awesome. I can't wait to see you and your boyfriends in the field once you graduate. Midoriya turned bright red. Thank you. He took his notebook and put it back in his bag. See you later. Mt. Lady waved as Midoriya, Bakugou, and Todoroki started walking away. Todoroki looked at Midoriya and opened his mouth to say something before Midoriya covered his mouth. Don't say it. I know what you're going to say. Just don't. Bakugou laughed at the shocked and offended look. Todoroki gained God. I love you too, Awa. We love you too, Kek. And Midoriya kissed his cheek, causing the explosive boy to freeze and turn red. Midoriya watched as Todoroki started teasing Bakugou, which caused the latter to start yelling at him. Seizing the opportunity, Midoriya snuck off and went back to Mt. Lady. Midoriya back so soon? Mt. Lady grinned at the smaller boy. I was wondering if I could buy one of your t-shirts, Midoriya asked, pulling out his wallet. Well, they are more made for girls. But sure, here's a large. It should fit. Mt. Lady pulled a shirt that had a design to match the woman's costume. It was definitely made to be skin tight. But Midoriya didn't mind. Thank you. He happily took the shirt and paid for it, then waved as he ran off to get back to his boyfriends. Luckily for him, they didn't seem to notice that he had left. Guys, I think there is a test your strength game nearby. The main prize is giant limited edition. All Might plushie Todoroki and Bakugou stopped what they were doing and shared a look. They were going to get that plushie for Midoriya. Show us the way. Deku. Bakugou smirked. The day continued like that. Midoriya ended up winning the plushie himself, much to Bakugou and Todoroki's displeasure. But a kiss cheered them up. They continued to walk around and meet different heroes and former heroes, which Midoriya got autographs from. Midoriya also had been managing to buy stuff, while his boyfriends weren't noticing. But they did eventually notice how Midoriya was accumulating a lot of stuff. Izuku, how did you get all of that stuff? Todoroki asked, pretty much knowing how I bought it, Midoriya said, glancing away and sweating. Deku. Bakugou growled, ill. Let you guys pay for the next thing, Midoriya said nervously. Seeming to shrink. You fucking better, Bakugou yelled, grabbing Midoriya's shoulder. We're not letting go of you for the rest of the day. Todoroki nodded, grabbing Midoriya's left hand. The mystery heroes should be making an appearance soon. Do you want to go get a seat? Now Midoriya nodded, half in defeat, half in excitement. So together the three set out to the stage where the mystery guest was supposed to be, which was a huge stage. They managed to get seats up front, and not a moment too soon, for many people started filling up the benches that were set up. Midoriya excitedly started mumbling about which hero it could be, while Todoroki and Bakugou stared at him fondly. Midoriya stopped though when something cold and wet splattered over his back. Midoriya looked back to see a fearful and sad child and a worried woman. I'm so sorry. He tripped and spilled his drink. Midoriya smiled. It's alright, it was an accident after all, plus this just means I get to wear one of the new shirts I got. He held up the empty lady shirt he had gotten the mother side in relief and sat down with her son, while Midoriya gave his stuff to his boyfriends. He then pulled off his soda-soaked shirt, which allowed Todoroki and Bakugou to get some nice eye candy, then pulled on the empty lady shirt. It was really tight, but still comfortable. Todoroki and Bakugou went bright red. Though the shirt was so tight, it showed off Midoriya's abs and muscles. Both of them were suddenly very glad for the clumsy kid. After a few more minutes, the lights darkened, drawing everyone's attention to the stage. Spotlights started moving across the stage as fog flooded it. American music started playing, which made Midoriya suspicious. It wasn't until a boisterous laugh came from the speakers that everyone was tipped off to who it was. A buff Toshinori rose up from the stage, hands on his hips. I am he. He immediately went back to his small form, coughing into his elbow. Here, though he was no longer the #1 hero or the symbol of peace, he was still meant with cheering and clapping. After all, he had saved many people and was in many hearts. Really, he's who we've been waiting this long to see. Bakugou grumbled. Midoriya slapped his arm. Be nice to my doll. Toshinori. He hesitantly looked over to Todoroki, who seemed to be sparkling as he looked at Midoriya. No, stop it. Todoroki sighed and looked back up at the stage. Midoriya and Bakugou did the same to see Toshinori sitting in a chair, another chair next to him with a table in front of it. Toshinori was waving happily at everyone in the crowd, seeming not to notice the trio. Hello everyone, I'm glad to see so many people here today. As you know, this is my first time at Hiroken. I have a lot more free time now. Toshinori awkwardly joked. Anyway, I believe we have about 3 hours. He looked at someone off stage, then smiled back at the crowd. Yes, 3 hours. From what I'm told, we're going to be doing several segments, first off being questions for about 20 minutes. So feel free to step up to the mic over there. He pointed to a small mic on floor level to his left and asked away. A lot of people went up to the microphone, eager to ask the former hero questions. Midoriya noticed that most people have gone up. Midoriya knew that before he started training with All Might, he would have been one of the first ones up. The first, however, was a small boy with bright eyes. Hi, All Might, my name is Shiro. Is it true that you're not a hero anymore? Toshinori smiled sadly. Unfortunately, I am unable to fight villains anymore, so I am unable to be a pro hero. However, Toshinori sat up straighter. A year or two ago, I was taught a valuable lesson by a young boy in middle school. There are multiple ways to be a hero regardless of quirk, age, or anything else like that. You can be a hero to the environment by picking up some litter. You can be another person's hero by choosing to be their friend. You can be your mother's hero by helping do the dishes. In this society, we have adopted the idea that you can only be a hero by beating up villains. But that is not true. So, while I may not be a professional hero anymore, I will continue to try and be a hero in smaller ways. The boy nodded in awe of Toshinori's answer before walking back to his seat with his mother. Midoriya smiled, happy that Toshinori was spreading the mentality that anyone could be a hero. The next person up was a younger woman. She looked like a very curious person. Hello, Mr. All Might. I'm sure that I'm not the only one wondering this. But how did you and your girlfriend meet and get together? Toshinori turned bright red. He was a stuttering mess. To everyone's amusement, he cleared his throat and tried again. I had first met 𝐻𝐭 when I went to one of my students Izuku Midoriya's house to get permission to move him into the dorms. After that we started texting, because she was concerned with how young Izuku seemed to get injured because of his quirk, and well, we started talking about other things. Then we met in person again when I took her to her surprise birthday party. And we talked more, which was when I knew I liked her. Later, when I was taking her home, I confessed. And she admitted she liked me too. We then went on a date that Saturday, which I'm sure you all know." He chuckled slightly at the end. He left out the part where he came to Deku for dating advice. Bakugou yelled out, smirking. Midoriya immediately started panicking, trying to shush Bakugou and make him sit back down, but only succeeded in drawing more attention to them. "Izuku, Bakugou?" Todoroki Toshinori questioned. Looking at the three, Midoriya turned bright red and waved shyly. Toshinori laughed in response, waving back. He then turned back to the people in line. The woman had left, replaced by a young man who had scaly skin that occasionally changed color. "Hello, All Might." Going off of the last question, "Do you now consider Izuku Midoriya your son?" Midoriya covered his face with his hands as he turned an even darker red. Todoroki perked up and seemed to sparkle like Ioma, with a look of awe on his face. Bakugou just shook his head, grinning and laughing under his breath. Toshinori himself laughed and glanced at Midoriya. "I suppose so. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to go any easier on him when I am teaching him and his class. I'll continue to be fair in my teaching." "Shit," Bakugou muttered before looking over at his boyfriends. One appeared to be short-circuiting, while the other looked fired up. He had a feeling he would have to be a babysitter for the rest of their time. Their Midoriya was dead. His idol, his mentor, his inspiration had just said that he considered him his son. His brain was totally fried. He didn't really remember his father, just knowing that he died overseas a year after Midoriya was announced quirkless. So to him, Toshinori had been his first father figure. And now he practically was his father. Todoroki, though he looked like someone had just told him the secrets to the universe, he may have barely had an expression past neutral. But to those who were close to him, he looked blown away, and in pure bliss. Bakugou gave Toshinori a look that said, "Look at what you did." Toshinori waved him off in response, which pissed Bakugou off a little. The next person to come up was a little girl, some fur growing in all over her body. She looked no more than 5. Mr. All Might, can I have a hug?" Most of the adults and teenagers in the room. The stage was in almost died from the cuteness overload. Of course, Toshinori got up and walked down a small staircase that led to the audience. He then got down on his knees so that the little girl could hug him. "You have such a good dad," Todoroki whispered to Midoriya. Midoriya opened his mouth to say something but decided against it, and just shyly nodded. The line continued with people asking questions, occasionally giving gifts, and overall being excited about actually talking to the former #1 hero. Midoriya watched happily as he slowly became less red, until someone asked another question relating to him or his mom. Soon though, someone came on stage and whispered to Toshinori. Toshinori frowned slightly. "Sorry everyone, but it's time to move on. We will be doing more questions later though. For now we're going to start our next segment, where I will be bringing on a guest and talking to them for about 10 minutes. Each." There were some voices of disappointment, but everyone went back to their seats and buzzed with excitement about the guests. Midoriya himself was wondering if the guests were all heroes, and if it was heroes he knew or not. "Our first guest is." Toshinori started plugging his ears slightly. A loud "oh yeah" resounded from behind the stage, causing a lot of people to cover their ears. Midoriya himself didn't already used to it. He knew who was coming. Present Mike ran up on stage, grinning happily. "Present Mike is here." He didn't even need a microphone. He was so loud, he plopped down in the open seat, crossing his legs. Toshinori chuckled, and sweat dropped. "Try not to make anyone go deaf, please." "I'll try." Present Mike gave a thumbs up, but everyone doubted he could actually keep his volume down enough. "So this is your 5th year here, right?" Toshinori asked. "6th actually. But this is the first year I managed to drag Eraserhead here." Toshinori raised an eyebrow. "Really? He's here, yeah?" Present Mike turned in the seat to look backstage. "Yo, come here." Eraserhead, the front row, could hear a faint no come from backstage. The 3 boyfriends shared a look, knowing that Present Mike wasn't going to take no for an answer. Sure enough, Present Mike pouted, "Come on, please." There was a brief silence, then a sigh as Aizawa walked out on stage, a microphone headset attached to him. He walked over to the seat Present Mike was in. "Happy?" Toshinori laughed, while Present Mike nodded happily, making room in the chair for Aizawa, who hesitantly sat down, glaring slightly. "Hello, Eraserhead. How are you?" Toshinori asked, already knowing the answer. "I want to go home. I told you the cats will be fine, plus it's good to get out." Present Mike grinned, wrapping an arm around Aizawa's shoulders. "Well, it's actually a good thing you're here. Later we're going to have a quirk contest, and it would be good for someone who can erase quirks to be here," Toshinori mentioned, causing the audience to perk up. "Can I be in it?" Present Mike asked, sitting up. "No, y'all make everyone go deaf," Aizawa said, shutting his boyfriend down. Present Mike pouted. "Can I at least help judge? It would be nice to pick out some future sidekicks." Toshinori grinned and nodded. "Why not?" Aizawa looked at Toshinori silently, saying it was a bad idea. Toshinori just smiled back. "By the way, I heard what you said earlier about Midoriya. I better not catch you giving him or his boyfriend's special treatment." Toshinori blushed slightly. "I said I wasn't going to present." Mike smirked and fake coughed Shinzo. He then fake coughed again. Aizawa turned to glare at him. "I give none of my students special treatment." Sure, Present Mike laughed. Toshinori shook his head. "Eraserhead practice what you preach." Like you have any room to talk, he grumbled. The person from earlier came back on stage and whispered to Toshinori. Only a minute left. All right. Toshinori looked back at the couple. Anything you two want to say before you have to go? Actually, yeah. Present Mike stood and turned facing Aizawa, who looked at him in confusion. Present Mike took a deep breath and then got down on one knee, pulling out a small box. A lot of people in the crowd started going nuts, including Midoriya. Aizawa Shota. I know we've only been dating for 2 years, but I have loved you since our high school days. We've been through a lot together, both good and bad. So I thought it was time to ask. He opened the box to show a simple black and silver ring. Shota, will you marry me? Aizawa was trying best not to smile, but failed. Damn it, Hisashi. You just had to do a big proposal, didn't you? He moved to the edge of the seat, holding out his hand. Is that a yes? Present Mike asked. Yes, you idiot. Present Mike grinned and slipped the ring onto Aizawa's hand, then pulled him into a kiss. The crowd cheered for the couple, with some crying out of happiness. Midoriya was one of those people. Toshinori was clapping, tears in his eyes. He was so happy for his friends. Aizawa pulled away from the kiss, smiling happily for once. All right, I think our time is up. Present Mike nodded, and the two walked off stage hand in hand. Well, that was a good surprise, Toshinori chuckled, wiping his eyes a little. Well, let's see if our next guest can keep up the excitement. Please welcome our next guest. Midnight. People clapped, some of the males more excitedly, as the R-rated hero stepped out on stage, waving happily. She settled down in the guest chair, crossing her legs. Hello, everyone, it's nice to be here today. Toshinori and Midnight started talking. Midnight sending some flirty winks to the audience occasionally. The next guest was MS Joke, who kept the audience laughing during her time. Finally was Best Jeanist, which made Bakugou grumble and sink in his seat. After Best Jeanist left, though, Toshinori addressed the crowd. Now we are going to go back to questions for a little bit. But first I want to bring out a very special guest to help me answer them. You see, the organizers figured that people would be excited to see this certain person, and I can't argue with that. After all, I get excited every time I see her. Toshinori chuckled. Please welcome her onto the stage. With that introduction, the green-haired woman with equally green eyes, who was short and plump, but still gorgeous, stepped on stage. It was none other than Inko Midoriya. Mom. Midoriya looked at her in slight confusion. Inko waved as people clapped at her entrance. Sitting down, she was obviously flustered and very pleased and excited. Thank you all for the warm welcome. Toshinori was looking at her with a smile and bright eyes. It was obvious how much he adored her and loved her. As he and Inko got settled, a line started to form again with questions. People who didn't get a chance to answer questions getting in the front of the line. First up was a male that was a little older than Midoriya. He was smiling casually for someone who appeared to have lava for hair that was constantly moving and shifting. Hello, All Might MS Midoriya. I was going to ask something else, but now that MS Midoriya is here, I was wondering, when did you fall in love with All Might? Inko blushed and glanced at Toshinori. Well, I had always admired him since he was, and still is, my son's biggest idol. I don't know exactly when that admiration turned to a crush, but I realized that I had a crush on him a little bit before my birthday. Then Izuku pointed it out at my party that it was obvious that I liked him, and that shifted into love when he asked me out for a date. Midoriya was happy to see his parents on stage getting questions about various things and overall having fun. Both of them also gave great advice and responded with inspirational messages. Everything was going well for the most part until a person in a hood stepped up who covered their face. So Izuku is your guy's son, right? Their voice was muffled, but Midoriya could have sworn he heard that voice before Toshinori, and Inko shared a brief look before Toshinori cleared his throat. Yes, that is partly true. That means you love him, right? I love him too. I especially love it when he's all bloody and covered in bruises. They pulled back the hood and mask that covered their face to reveal Midoriya looked and shook, while Bakugou, Todoroki, Inko, and Toshinori had to do a double take. The person giggled. I love him so much, that's why I wanted to try and look like him. It was hard getting his blood at first, but when we started fighting at the provision license exam, it became really easy. What is the meaning of this? Toshinori got up and moved in front of Inko, getting a bad feeling about this. The person giggled, and soon their clothes and skin started melting off. In a Gray-ooze parents were ushering kids away from the person, and for good reason. After the Gray-ooze fell, it became apparent the person was actually Toga. Midoriya wasted no time in powering up one for all and jumping on stage in front of his parents. What are you doing here? Bakugou and Todoroki soon joined him, getting next to him. Toga giggled. I decided that I couldn't wait any longer. I want you. It would also be nice to get your parents' blessings, but I suppose that can wait. After all, I'm not the only one who wants you, plus All Might can't come to rescue you anymore. As soon as she said that, multiple warp gates appeared, and many villains stepped out. Midoriya clenched his fist and got into a fighting stance. He would defend his family and boyfriends until the pros arrived. He would do whatever it took. Villains quickly surrounded the stage, making the few civilians that remained to gather on stage. Midoriya took note of how there was a barrier surrounding a portion of the room, most likely to keep the pro heroes out. And them in it quickly clicked in his parents' and boyfriends' minds that Midoriya was the only one who could legally do anything right now. and that frightened them. It didn't take long for Shigaraki to step forward, a horde of villains behind him. Well, isn't this fantastic? We captured a retired hero, civilians, and 3 UA students, with only one being allowed to fight. Everyone could see his chilling grin behind his hand mask. Midoriya glanced back and saw parents and children huddling close together, adults and teenagers who knew they couldn't do anything, looking ready to step up if they had to. His mother clinging to Toshinori, who was powerless, and his 2 boyfriends who both were ready to jump in the fray. Steeling himself, he took a step forward. That's right, I'm the only one who can legally fight right now. It doesn't matter, though I will protect everyone. He grinned and activated his quirk, red stripes glowing on his skin and green electricity sparking around his body. Brave words for one teenager against over 100 villains. Why even bother? Everyone treated you terribly when you were younger because you didn't have a quirk. They are all selfish people who don't deserve to be protected, Shigaraki said, glaring slightly at the people behind Midoriya, who all shrunk under the villain's glare. Midoriya managed to chuckle. Everyone deserves to be saved, and I've already forgiven everyone who wronged me. Don't waste your time trying to turn me into a villain, because I am a hero, the hero Deku. With that, Midoriya flew off the stage and into the crowd of villains. Everyone watched as he moved quickly to take people down, mostly with swift kicks. Children were in awe, and some quickly found a new favorite hero. People started to slowly cheer Midoriya on as he fought. Bakugou and Todoroki tried to step in, but Toshinori held them back. It would just be worse if you two started fighting. Only jump in if it's life or death. Todoroki and Bakugou were going to protest, but Inko looked at them in a way that made them stay put and watched, cheering on their boyfriend. Midoriya tried his best to keep a smile on his face as he battled the villains. He did grimace when one of them managed to burn him with what he guessed was acid, ruining his shirt. Head have to buy a new one. One thing that worked in his favor now, though, was that he was able to use 15 of one for all. Now his training might not have been the best for his health, but it was worth it. He could even do 20 if he pushed it. But he knew that it was better to stay at 15 lest he injure a muscle. This reminded him of what Aizawa had told him: if he kept injuring himself, then others would have to come to his rescue, which wasn't an option right now. So he kept it up, knocking villains out and trying his best not to get injured. A scream, though, drew his attention away from his fight and to the stage where a villain was trying to grab a little girl. Midoriya immediately jumped up and knocked him out with a hard punch. He smiled at the girl before jumping back into the fray. Toshinori was certainly impressed by Midoriya. He was a true hero, defending everyone within his reach. With a smile, he had no doubt that Midoriya would easily rise to the top and take his place as the new symbol of peace. Inko was worried, though. Her baby was fighting the villains and protecting everyone all alone. No one could help without getting in serious trouble. She was also proud, but mostly worried, especially whenever he got hurt. Bakugou and Todoroki weren't doing any better. They kept thinking about how if they had just gotten their licenses like the rest of the class, they would be able to help out Midoriya without making things worse. It made them hurt whenever Midoriya got hurt after knocking out and taking down multiple villains, though Midoriya jumped back on stage and ran to his boyfriends. "I'll make this quick. While I distract them, Kei try to take down the barrier, so the pros can come help, and everyone can escape. Shoto, make a wall around the civilians and my parents, so that it's harder for the villains to get to them, and make an ice prison around the villains I took down." Without waiting for a response, Midoriya sent a flying kick at a giant villain. Bakugou and Todoroki looked at each other and nodded before doing what they were told. Todoroki practically made a fortress of ice around everyone, apologizing for the cold when he saw people shiver. He then went to work making an ice prison for the defeated villains. In the meantime, Bakugou went over to the barrier where there was no one around and started punching it and firing off explosions, trying to take it down. Midoriya kept the rest of the villains busy while his boyfriends did what he asked. It got easier yet harder. The more villains he took down, he was panting, barely keeping a smile, while he was surrounded by the last few villains. By a few, it was around 16, but still better than over 100. "You look so good like that." Toga giggled. "A few more cuts would look even better," though she held up her knife and ran at him, widely slashing at him, while Midoriya jumped away. Inko almost had a heart attack watching and listening to it through the tiny window in the ice shelter. She and the other civilians were. Midoriya hissed as he got cut by Toga. His shirt was basically shredded thanks to the crazy girl. Midoriya grimaced and tore his shirt off, definitely making a note to get a new one later. Let's just say, though, Toga was not the only one looking at Midoriya dreamily at the moment. More villains attacked and Midoriya took them down. His body was sore and injured. Screaming at him to rest, his odds seemed impossible. It didn't like he had a chance of winning. He still fought, though, with that smile on his face, knowing that people were watching him right now, that he needed to protect people, that he needed to be strong for finally. It was down to Toga, Dabai, Shigaraki, Kurogiri, Mr. Compressed twice, and 2 other villains. Midoriya was standing between them and the civilians. Todoroki was right in front of the ice fortress, ready to jump in and fight. While Bakugou still worked on the barrier, Shigaraki started clapping, taking Midoriya off guard. "Wow, you really are strong as a mini-boss. Soon you'll be a final boss. Though why not join us? Though we could make you even stronger. And you would be able to shape the world how you want to. Plus your mother would get to stay alive. Midoriya froze, a shiver going down his spine. What? A new person appeared out of nowhere holding 𝐭𝐻 in his arms. She was looking around with panicked eyes, unable to say anything thanks to the hand over her mouth. The villain himself chuckled. I can make any illusion I want to make people see different things. I simply made myself and this woman invisible, while making another illusion so to others. It looked like she was still in the ice shelter. Todoroki was watching with wide eyes, prepared to jump in. Toshinori looked at where he thought 𝐭𝐻 was in surprise to see the illusion disappear. He turned his wide eyes to the villains and his girlfriend and son. He was ready to jump out and go over to them. But it was Bakugou who held him back this time. I couldn't break through the shitty barrier. Neither could the pros on the other side. Shoto Deku. And I will handle this while you keep up everyone's morals here. Got it? Toshinori silently nodded as Bakugou joined Todoroki, and together they got into fighting stances. Midoriya, meanwhile, was distraught. A villain managed to slip through and grab his mother. Let her go. Shigaraki chuckled and went over to her. He placed all but one finger around her neck, making everyone freeze. It reminded Midoriya of when he was in the mall alone. Only this time it was so much worse. I'll let her go if you decide to join us. Of course, you'll also have to surrender, and let us restrain you. Do that, and we won't hurt anyone else, Shigaraki said, grinning and laughing slightly. Midoriya looked at his mother, who was shaking her head. The best she could, tears were in her eyes, and she was obviously terrified for both herself and Midoriya. He then looked at his boyfriends, who both wanted to step in, but couldn't. Finally, he looked at the people who were watching him from the small windows Todoroki had made into the ice, locking eyes with Toshinori, who looked so conflicted. He made up his mind. All right. Midoriya put his hands up and walked toward the villains. I knew you would make the right choice. Restrain him. Midoriya grunted as his arms were tied behind his back, then cuffed with cork restraints. Toga had made them tight enough to be uncomfortable, but loose enough that his arms still had circulation. Everyone was silent as Midoriya was restrained from head to toe, except for Toga's giggling and occasional remark as she gave Midoriya small cuts. The villains weren't taking any chances with Midoriya escaping. It wasn't till Midoriya was fully restrained that Shigaraki let go of 𝐭𝐻's neck, ignoring how the mother was sobbing and screaming into the illusionist villain's hand. Now that that's settled, it's time to go to phase 2. A villain who Midoriya didn't know stepped toward him holding a syringe filled with an unknown liquid. Midoriya's eyes widened as the syringe was brought to his neck and tried to squirm away, but Toga held him tight before it could be injected. Though a pink energy bullet hit it, shattering the glass, the liquid fell out and splashed over Midoriya's chest and on the floor. But that wasn't Midoriya's concern right now. Instead, he focused on the girl with orange hair with a pink sniper rifle in her hands, standing with a tall girl with loose long purple hair who was sitting down. Shigaraki growled as he looked up at the two girls who were sitting on top of the ice shelter. 𝗵𝐽 was smiling, while 𝗧𝗵𝗲 smirked. How did you two get in here? It wasn't that hard to find someone here who had a phase quirk. Too bad. It is only effective with the person using it, and one other person. I grab onto 𝗧𝗵𝗲, coughed, a little bit of blood coming out of her mouth, and grabbed her side. Sorry, 𝗵𝐽. I don't think I can fight yet. 𝗵𝐽 just patted her head. Don't worry, I can handle it. Join the others and make sure that they are protected. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 nodded and seemed to phase through the ice and into the ice shelter to join the civilians. 𝗵𝐽 smiled and looked back at the villains. You are the ones who hurt 𝗧𝗏. Now I'm going to hurt you. She jumped off the roof of the ice shelter and let the gun disappear. She summoned a staff and swung at the villain holding 𝗵𝐽, knocking him away and grabbing the woman. Midoriya grinned. I'm glad you're here. Well, of course I'm here. I come here every year with 𝗧𝗏. Plus, someone has to be around to save you, 𝗵𝐽 said as she summoned her tank and put 𝗵𝐽 in it. She then sent the tank moving toward Todoroki and Bakugou, who grabbed 𝗵𝐽. You're a pest. We should have killed you as soon as we learned about you, Shigaraki muttered, scratching his neck. 𝗵𝐽 giggled. Like you could once. 𝗵𝐽 was safe. The tank disappeared and 𝗵𝐽 summoned a machine gun. You know, being able to summon different weapons is fun. She then started firing her pink bullets at the villains, all of them rushing to move away from them. Midoriya took note how the bullets seemed to move around his body like there was some kind of barrier around him. 𝗵𝐽 took her chance and summoned a flash grenade and set it off, blinding the villains, while she went over to Midoriya and started undoing the restraints using a mini flamethrower to melt off the metal restraints. Midoriya sighed in relief once they were off and jumped up. Thanks. Your quirk is amazing, by the way. Midoriya grinned. 𝗵𝐽 smirked. Thank you, Mr. One, for all. Midoriya opened his mouth in confusion to say something, but 𝗵𝐽 cut him off. The love knew, which meant 𝗧𝗏 knew, and she told me they didn't have any more time for idle chit-chat. Though as the villains recovered from the flash grenade, Toga looked pissed when she saw Midoriya was free, while Shigaraki was pissed that his plan was falling apart, especially when the barrier broke thanks to the fact that villain who was holding it up got knocked out by the bullets earlier. Well, have to make a new plan. This sucks. He started scratching at his neck as pro heroes started to show up. Kurogiri. The warp gate nodded and started sending the villains who weren't caught in the ice prison back to whatever base they had now. Toga pouted at Midoriya, but then perked up. I can at least get something out of this. She rushed forward, catching everyone off guard as she pulled Midoriya into a kiss. while also cutting off a part of his skin. Midoriya could only focus on the pain as a good chunk of the flesh on his arm was pulled off and screamed. Toga pulled back giggling and jumped into the last warp gate as the heroes tried to rush the escaping villains. It was no use though, and they got away, only leaving the villains in the ice prison. Bakugou, Todoroki, 𝗵𝗃, Toshinori, 𝗵𝗃, and 𝗏𝗧𝗵𝗲 all rushed over to him. 𝗵𝗃 was there first and caught him as he stumbled and fell back. Bakugou and Todoroki got their second, kneeling down next to their boyfriend and frantically looking over him. 𝗵𝗃 and Toshinori got their third and were in tears as they saw their son, all injured with a bleeding arm. Finally 𝗏𝗧𝗵𝗲 got their last and kneeled by him, trying to think of a way to help. "Oh my poor baby," 𝗵𝗃 was crying hysterically. "A medic team is on their way," one of the nearby heroes mentioned. 𝗏𝗧𝗵𝗲 looked at 𝗵𝗃. "I can help you stabilize him so he isn't losing as much blood." 𝗵𝗃 nodded and kneeled down. "I need bandages here." 𝗵𝗃 looked to see Aizawa holding out his massive scarf. She smiled and took them. "Thank you." She then worked with 𝗏𝗧𝗵𝗲 to bandage Midoriya up using scissors that 𝗵𝗃 made, because those apparently counted as weapons. By the time the professional team arrived, Midoriya was mostly stable and going in and out of consciousness. Midoriya looked as people surrounded him, giving the medic space, but still wanting to watch and know what was happening. "Is everyone all right?" "Yes, you idiot, everyone is all right thanks to you," Bakugou yelled, angry with himself and heartbroken about his boyfriend getting this injured. Midoriya smiled and gave a thumbs up with his arm that wasn't missing skin. "That's great, I'm glad he's stable for the most part. Luckily the cuts weren't too deep and he didn't lose too much blood thanks to the missing skin on his arm, though he'll have to constantly keep it covered and clean it to make sure it doesn't get infected. He is lucky, though it could have been much worse," the head medic explained to 𝗵𝗃 and Toshinori. "The burns caused by the acid weren't too bad, either only damaging the skin instead of eating it away. It'll scar, but still heal." 𝗵𝗃 let out a sob and hid her face in Toshinori's chest, crying over her child. Toshinori hugged her and stroked her back. "Thank you, I'm assuming you're going to go to the hospital now?" The medic nodded. "We can have 2 people come with, if you would like." Toshinori glanced at Bakugou and Todoroki. "Let them ride with. We'll meet you at the hospital in our car." He nodded before ordering his team to move Midoriya onto the stretcher, where they wheeled him away with Todoroki and Bakugou following. The next day, Midoriya sat in his hospital bed, watching the news. Pretty much every news channel was covering the 𝗧𝗏𝗏 event, talking about how he had defended people from the villains. It made him happy that he was pretty much the only injury, and that people regarded him as a hero. It especially made him happy when they also mentioned 𝗵𝗃, and how she had helped. It also made him cry when some little kids talked about him being their favorite hero. What really made his day, though, was the thank you notes and letters that people sent. He would have to add them to the letter he got from Kota. A knock on the door snapped him out of his thoughts, and he watched as his boyfriend's parents and friends entered. Kirishima and Kaminari were there along with 𝗏𝗧𝗵𝗲 and 𝗵𝗃. His boyfriends rushed to his sides, though silently looking him over. "Geez, Midoriya, those 2 wouldn't shut up about you because they were so worried, even though the doctor told us you were fine," Kaminari said, settling against a wall. "It didn't help that we had to fight through a mob of people to get in. The press really wants to talk to you." Kirishima laughed, standing next to his boyfriend. "That's not going to be fun to deal with later." "I should know," Toshinori sighed, having flashbacks. "On the bright side, everyone's talking about how heroic you are. Well, they mentioned me a little, but most people are talking about you since you were injured. And I showed up after you took down a majority of the villains," 𝗵𝗃 mentioned, trying to lighten the mood. "I'm just glad you're alright." 𝗵𝗃 moved over and pulled Midoriya into a hug, making sure to be gentle. Midoriya chuckled. "I'm glad I was able to hold them off till others arrived. I'm also glad no one else got hurt. You need to worry about yourself too," Todoroki finally said. He and Bakugou both hadn't slept, and it had shown all they could think about was how they couldn't do anything, and how Midoriya got hurt. His screams still haunted them, and the kiss just pissed them off. Midoriya frowned slightly. I know, but I was the only one who could do something at the moment, and at least I didn't end up in a full body cast, or even break my bones." He grinned again. "Plus recovery girl stopped by earlier, and she helped my skin grow back some on my arm and cuts close up, so it isn't as bad." Toshinori frowned. "I'm sorry I wasn't able to help." He looked down. "I was the #1 hero, the symbol of peace, yet I couldn't do anything, or you aren't able to fight because you don't have the power to. That's fine, but me and Shoto have the power to fight." Everyone looked at Bakugou at his outburst, to see him clenching his fist, frowning and close to tears. "Shoto and I have the power, but we couldn't fight all because we don't have our fucking licenses. We could have made it out of there with Deku uninjured. If only we had those stupid fucking licenses that say we can use our quirks against villains." Todoroki nodded. "If we had our licenses, you wouldn't be in this hospital. We both feel like failures because we didn't get our licenses, and even more so now because you got hurt, Izuku. We tried not to let it show, and instead just be happy about you getting your license, and you saving everyone like the true hero you are. But we can't ignore our feelings any longer. We're sorry." Everyone was silent, thinking about what Bakugou and Todoroki had just said. Midoriya frowned and shook his head. "Cake and Shadow-kun, you're not failures. And you don't need to apologize. It's not like you two hurt me like this. It was the villain's faults, plus you two did what I asked, and tried to protect everyone without fighting. So even without licenses, you were both still helpful, and did what you could. Yeah, Midoriya's right, you may not have been able to fight, but you still helped protect people. Listen, Kirishima pointed at the TV, where the news was still playing more news on the Hirokin incident. We have learned that while Izuku Midoriya was fighting the villains, 2 UA students, who do not have their provisional licenses, tried to make a difference in their own ways. Shoto Todoroki helped protect civilians by making what has been described as an ice shelter for people to take refuge in, while Katsuki Bakugou worked on taking down the barrier that stood in the way of pro heroes. It is good to know that while UA High School has had some problems in the past, they are helping create many future heroes. Midoriya smiled happily. See, you two were amazing. Bakugou and Todoroki both looked at the TV in surprise, not expecting that. They felt many mixed emotions at the moment. Bakugou smiled though and glanced at Midoriya, but then noticed his arm and frowned again. I'm still upset that the bitch injured you like though. Yeah, that was brutal how Toga took some of his skin and kissed him. She has always given me the creeps even before I met her, when she tried to get Hito back into the 𝗨𝗵𝗃𝗀, said, glancing at Katsumi. Bakugou growled, next time I see here him tearing her limb from limb. I agree, Todoroki said, ice growing on his right shoulder and small heat waves coming off his left. I don't think that you guys should do that, Midoriya muttered, sweat dropping. While I may or may not want to harm her myself. Everyone looked at Inko in shock, never expecting her to say anything like that. It's better that you don't do that so you two can still be heroes along with Izuku. We could always hide the body, Katsumi joked, smiling slightly. Kirishima and Kaminari had to hold back laughter when it looked like Bakugou and Todoroki were actually considering it. Midoriya looked at his boyfriends in shock, while Inko and Toshinori exchanged worried looks. Hito, what did I say about killing people? Emiko exclaimed, pouting at her girlfriend. Katsumi laughed, which caused a little blood to come out of her mouth. I was joking, plus I didn't say I'd help kill her. I just suggested hiding the body if they did, which I may or may not know how to do. Emiko shook her head, while she wiped the blood off of Katsumi's chin with a handkerchief. Midoriya looked at his boyfriends with concern. I don't have to make you two promise not to murder her, do I? Todoroki looked at Bakugou, then Midoriya. I will make no promises. Kaminari and Kirishima did start laughing at that point along with Katsumi. Bakugou smirked. Same for me, Toshinori frowned. That is very concerning. Inko herself just looked around at everyone, not sure how she should react or what she should do. Midoriya sighed, shaking his head. While it was crazy, he enjoyed moments like this where everyone could laugh and joke around. Soon though, things were going to change, and it all had to do with a certain thing that had found its way into Midoriya's bloodstream. Midoriya was released on Monday, for the most part healed thanks to Recovery Girl. What Kirishima had said was true though, and Midoriya was swarmed by the press, all wanting to question him. Midoriya chuckled and blushed when Bakugou and Todoroki got closer to him, holding his hands and each wrapping an arm around his middle, but didn't protest. Instead, he focused on talking to the press, though he quickly became overwhelmed. Hey, one question at a time please. I can't answer your questions if I can't hear you. He smiled as the press calmed down and pointed at a man to speak. Midoriya, how did it feel to be the only one able to fight against the villains? Midoriya tilted his head slightly and thought, well, I was a little scared since it would be my first fight after getting my license, and no one was able to help me if something happened. I also felt determined, though I wanted to protect everyone whatever it took. The next one to speak was a woman with hair that moved around. Did you really take down almost 100 villains by yourself? Midoriya blushed slightly. I guess so. I wasn't really paying attention to how many there were. I was just focused on not letting them near the stage. Midoriya, do you know the girl who found her way in the barrier and helped you fight? And how did she get in? Midoriya bit his lip slightly and decided to tell a little lie for Emiko and Katsumi. Yes, I do know her. And no, I don't know how she got in. How did you feel about the fact that while your boyfriends helped protect the civilians, they weren't able to fight with you? Midoriya glanced back when he felt the arms around his waist tighten. He saw how Bakugou looked ready to explode and Todoroki was growing colder. He looked back at the reporter. I was glad that they weren't injured and proud that they did what they could with their restrictions to prove his point. Midoriya kissed both Todoroki and Bakugou's cheeks, making both of them blush. Midoriya, how did it feel to be the one protecting the former #1 hero for once? Midoriya chuckled. I guess I didn't really think of that. It honestly more felt like me protecting my parents and the civilians. A person with flaming hair spoke up. First of all, my son and husband were 2 of the people you protected, so I am very thankful for that. Second, considering the fact that All Might was a secret guest, why do you think the villains attacked? Midoriya paused, slightly surprised. Oh, I was happy to protect everyone, he smiled, and second, his face twisted in confusion. Not exactly sure. More questions were asked and Midoriya did his best to answer all of them. Bakugou and Todoroki were getting irritated though, and eventually Bakugou decided to cut in. Oi, We have to go to school, you can ask more questions later. Bakugou proceeded to pick up Midoriya, making the latter squeak in surprise, and with Todoroki pushed through the reporters and run away to where they knew Toshinori's car was waiting. The press followed them trying to ask more questions, but Bakugou shoved Midoriya into Toshinori's car and got in after him. Todoroki jumped in after him and slammed the door closed. Midoriya sighed. They asked some hard questions to answer. Toshinori chuckled. Welcome to being a hero. We wanted to wait out for you three, but the press swarmed us, and we had to retreat to the car. 𝐭 smiled back at Midoriya. I know that you did great, though he tried to answer all of their questions when he should have just ignored them. Bakugou grumbled, shifting around so that Midoriya was in the middle. They then all buckled up and Toshinori started driving, careful to not hit the press who were surrounding the car. But they were really nice for the most part. One of them told me that their son and husband were there, and that they were thankful for what I did, Midoriya said as he smiled happily. That's great, though I still am upset you got so injured, 𝐭 muttered. Don't worry, the doctors said most of the bleeding was internal. That's where the blood is supposed to be, Midoriya cheered. He started to sweat nervously when Todoroki gave him a triggered look. Joking. Bakugou started laughing. Your face showed up. That was fucking hilarious language. Sorry, Auntie. Bakugou wasn't really that sorry. Todoroki looked at Bakugou. Didn't one of our classmates ask why you still called 𝐭 auntie? Yeah, it was Zero, I think. Midoriya mumbled. Hanta is stupid, and I'll stop calling her auntie once I marry you too, Bakugou yelled, looking at his boyfriends Midoriya and Todoroki blushed at that, both looking at their laps shyly. Toshinori chuckled. I think y'all have to wait a few years for that, 𝐭 giggled. While that might take a while, I give you my blessing, Katsuki Mom. Midoriya was even brighter red now. He couldn't say that he opposed it, though he may or may not have thought about a wedding with Bakugou and Todoroki and how he wanted it to go. Bakugou smirked. Now I just need to get Rai's blessing, then we're all set. I guess you could ask her once we go visit her again, Todoroki said, then looked at 𝐭. Can I get your blessing too? Of course, 𝐭 answered, smiling. Midoriya was too embarrassed to speak, which earned him some teasing the rest of the ride. When they pulled up to the school, though there were even more reporters, luckily for us, we can pull into staff parking, Toshinori reassured as he pulled into a gated side entrance, flashed his ID, then drove in. After they parked, the three students got out. Toshinori rolled down his window and leaned out. I'm going to take 𝐭 home. I'll see you three later. All right, bye Mom, bye Dad. Immediately after he said that, Midoriya froze, turning red all over again. Toshinori was also blushing but grinned. Bye son, 𝐭 giggled and waved, clearly happy about what was said. Toshinori then drove away, leaving the three teens to head to class. Todoroki and Bakugou had brought Midoriya his uniform, which he changed into before leaving the hospital. They had also brought him his backpack, so they were able to go straight to class. Midoriya stopped short of entering the room, though he had finally looked at his reflection in a window. And while he didn't look bad, he didn't look good either. The acid had burned part of his chest and neck, making an exposed part of his neck look discolored. The missing skin on his arm was hidden by his uniform, but he knew it was there, and it did not look pretty. He also had a scar on his cheek from one of the cuts from Toga, which was noticeable. His hair was also even messier than usual, looking like he hadn't brushed it in days. Midoriya usually didn't care about his looks, but he was suddenly feeling like he should have looked better than he did. Oi Deku, whatcha looking at? Midoriya glanced at his boyfriend's eye. I was just thinking about how I didn't look my best today. Before Bakugou and Todoroki could say anything, Aoyama pushed them aside, radiating sparkles. If you're not feeling confident with your looks, I can help with that. He rushed forward and pulled a makeup bag out of nowhere. Hey, what are you? Bakugou was cut off. Shush, making art takes concentration. He then started to apply concealer to Midoriya's skin. Midoriya let him, knowing he was trying to help, and he was pretty good when it came to beauty-related things. Ooh, is Deku getting a makeover? Uraraka had peeked her head out of the door, wanting to watch what was happening. Aoyama finished with the concealer, making it look like Midoriya had no scars. He also fixed Midoriya's tie in the process. How do you feel about lipstick and eyeshadow? Midoriya tilted his head slightly. I don't really think it would suit this outfit, and the fact that I'm just going to class. Aoyama nodded. True, well, have to wait for another occasion. Now about that hair. Aoyama pulled out a jar of hair gel and a comb, then started styling Midoriya's hair. By now most of class 1 was watching, interested in what Aoyama was doing. Finally Aoyama pulled back, showing off his work. Midoriya's hair was parted at the side, almost like Aoyama's, only it was super fluffy still, and stuck up a little in several places, but otherwise looked great. His tie was tied normally, which threw a few people off a little bit, but looked nice, and all his blemishes and scars were covered. Midoriya looked at himself in a mirror provided by Yaoyorozu and smiled. Thanks Aoyama. I look great thanks to you. You always look great. I just made you shine brighter, Aoyama said, sparkling intensely. Todoroki slipped an arm around Midoriya's waist and kissed his cheek. You look amazing no matter what. Bakugou smirked and wrapped an arm around Midoriya's shoulders. Shoto's right about that. Midoriya blushed. Looking between Bakugou and Todoroki, he was feeling flustered. But there was another feeling he couldn't quite place. Hey, it's time for class, Aizawa said, as he entered the classroom looking more tired than usual yet happier too. Everyone moved into class, sitting in their seats. Midoriya opened his notebook ready to take notes. But everything became blurry for a second. He shook his head, and the blurriness went away. So as you may know, I am now engaged to present Mike. Many people didn't know that, and most of them gasped and started cheering. Aizawa's eyes narrowed, stopping people in their tracks. The only reason I am talking about this is because he's a present. Mike wants to have our wedding in just a few weeks, which means there will be a week that I am gone. Kirishima raised his hand. Are we invited to the wedding? Aizawa groaned, slightly sure. I don't care, he's hounding me about inviting people anyway. A few people cheered, while others laughed slightly. Midoriya didn't do either. He was feeling weird. He kept looking at Bakugou and Todoroki. Something in him was telling him that he needed to grab them and run. To where he didn't know. Before he realized it, the class and teacher were staring at him. Aizawa raised an eyebrow. Midoriya, are you alright? You're muttering again. Yeah, dude. And you look a little pale. But I guess that could be the concealer. Kaminari muttered the last part. Izuku, is one of your injuries bothering you? Todoroki asked, getting up and moving by his boyfriend's Oi Deku. What's wrong? Bakugou asked, moving next to him. Midoriya didn't answer, looking down when both Todoroki and Bakugou touched him. Though he snapped just like the pen in his hand, people jumped in surprise, as he quickly stood, knocking his chair over and slammed his hands on the desk, not caring about the ink all over his hand. Idiots, you're all idiots. This world is filled with idiots, thinking that the heroes we have now are so great. But they are not. They are all just in it for the fame and fortune. Whoa, Midoriya, no need to say things like that. Why don't you just calm down? Kaminari held up his hands, surprised by Midoriya's outburst. Deku, what the fuck are you? Bakugou was cut off by a sharp punch to the stomach, making him double over. Shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. I need to change it. Things need to be better. I can make things better. Midoriya finally looked up, and the class was thrown off by his crazy-looking bloodshot eyes. Midoriya, something is wrong with you. Come with me to Recovery Girl to have you examined. Aizawa slowly approached Midoriya, knowing that something was making the usually sweet teen act crazy. There's nothing wrong with me. You're all the ones who have something wrong with them. Before anyone could react, Midoriya also punched Todoroki, who was holding Bakugou, making him pass out. Midoriya then picked up his boyfriends and hoisted them over his shoulders. It'll make things better. Then you all will see. Y'all all understand and join me. Aizawa frowned deeply, his scarves starting to move on their own. Midoriya put Bakugou and Todoroki down. You are not sane right now. Midoriya started laughing. It was psychotic and uncontrolled, though unlike his usual laughter, it scared everyone. Deku, please calm down. We can talk this out. Uraraka tried approaching Midoriya, only to be blocked by Aizawa. Midoriya suddenly stopped laughing. You're right. He tilted his head, smirking. We can talk it out, just not now. Then before anyone could move, Midoriya jumped out the window, still holding Bakugou and Todoroki. The campus was on lockdown. Everyone was searching for Midoriya. Bakugou and Todoroki told to not engage and instead notify the teachers if they found them. Midoriya was clever. Though he had chosen to hide in the flooded area of the 𝐒𝐻𝐽, said boy paced around the bottom of the boat, mumbling to himself. He knew it would take a little bit to find him, but not as long as he would like. Meanwhile, Todoroki and Bakugou were watching from where they were chained up to a pipe with quirk-resistant chains. They didn't even know how Midoriya had gotten them. What they did know, though, was that Midoriya was not sane right now. Bakugou couldn't stand it anymore. Oi, shitty nerd. What's all this about? Midoriya paused, then turned to look at Bakugou with a big smile. The voices told me that I needed to run away with you too, to make everything better. Bakugou and Todoroki glanced at each other, confused and slightly disturbed. Todoroki decided to try and talk some sense into him. Izuku, something is making you act in a way you usually wouldn't. Why don't we go to Recovery Girl to figure out what it is? No, I need to do other things first. Midoriya went over to a table that had a few things on it. We need to take care of the fakes, the heroes who just want money, fame, or power. Of course, it would take a long time to do it myself. I'll need you two to help me. Bakugou and Todoroki's eyes widened when Midoriya turned around to show them a gun he had. So Todoroki, assuming y'all want to take care of Endeavor. I don't mind letting you do that. After we take out the fake heroes, only true heroes will be left. Then we'll also have to work on reteaching everyone at UA on how to be a true hero. But those who aren't cut out for it, well, Midoriya waved the gun again, we'll also need to kill all the villains. We can't have them running around while we purge the world of fakes. You're insane. We're not going to help you kill people. That's the opposite of being a hero, Bakugou yelled, pulling against the chains. Midoriya blinked. Oh, is that what you're worried about? He walked over and squatted down in front of Bakugou. You see, once we purge the world, things will be reset, so no one will be calling us villains. Izuku, listen to what you're saying. You want to commit mass genocide. That is a very villainous thing that no one will forget. You sound like Stain, Todoroki said, drawing Midoriya's attention to him. Midoriya started laughing. I sound like Stain, huh? Well, maybe that plan is a bad idea. Bakugou and Todoroki looked at each other. Did they convince Midoriya to stop this? I was thinking 2 small bad heroes will always show up. And it would get tiring if we had to reset the world every time it happened, plus, we wouldn't have the power to do it. Midoriya walked out of Bakugou and Todoroki's sight for a moment. But they could hear him muttering. A minute later, Midoriya came back in a different outfit. He was wearing black dress shoes, black slacks, a white button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, a perfectly tied black tie, and a black button-up vest. Where the fuck did you get those clothes? Bakugou asked, clearly confused. Midoriya test and shook a finger at Bakugou. No more swearing, your future mother-in-law doesn't like it. And I don't either. Plus, swearing around kids is bad anyway. You two are right, that plan was stupid, and made me seem like I was copying Stain, Bakugou growled. But Todoroki put a hand on his shoulder to calm him down. So y'all be letting us go? Midoriya smirked. I never said that. He turned back to the table, putting on some black gloves. You see, I was thinking too small to make sure there is peace, and that heroes stay good. It would be easier if we were running the world, so we simply have to conquer it, take over the world, and all that jazz. Like hell yeah, I'll be able to do that. A gunshot rang out, and the next thing Bakugou knew was that there was a pain in his leg. He let out a yell and struggled against the chains. Midoriya sighed and grabbed some bandages and tweezers. I told you not to swear, you did, so I had to punish you. Don't worry though, I love you so ill. Take the bullet out and bandage it. Midoriya started doing just that, ignoring Bakugou's screams of pain, and only speaking to tell him to hold still. When Midoriya was done, he stood back up. Now, I don't know about you two, but I'm starving. I'll go get us something to eat. Bakugou and Todoroki watched him leave, both not really trusting him at the moment. How is your leg? It fucking hurts like a bitch. Thanks for asking, Bakugou grumbled, looking down at his leg. Midoriya had cut off part of his pants, so better look at his leg. I suggest we do what he says for now, till we can escape or be rescued. I don't know what's happening with Midoriya, but it's not good. Todoroki looked around, trying to see if there was anything that could help them. Why is he acting like this? Though what's causing it? Bakugou asked, doing the same as Todoroki. Well, based on previous events, I would say it had something to do with the villains. I don't know how though. Bakugou paused. Wait, weren't they trying to inject him with something at Hirokin? Yes, but Emiko shattered the syringe before they could inject it. Some of the liquid splashed on him. But I believe that it needs to be in the bloodstream since they were trying to inject him with it. He had cuts all over him. You don't think it could have gotten in through there, do you? Bakugou looked back at Todoroki, eyes widened in realization. Todoroki nodded. You're probably right. It would be nice to know what the liquid is doing exactly though, and how long it will last. Footsteps caught their attention. They looked in surprise to see Gyro. Soaking wet, Gyro? Todoroki asked. And me? Kirishima said, also soaked, and rushed over to the two. I'm going to break the pipe. Then you guys can slide the chains off. All right, everyone else is outside waiting for us. How did you find us? Todoroki asked as Kirishima started breaking the pipe with his quirk. A bird told Koda. It saw Midoriya coming here with you two. Sorry. It took a while to find the right animal to talk to. He grunted and broke the pipe, letting Bakugou and Todoroki slide the chains up then off of themselves. We thought he might have been restraining you too, so they sent in Kirishima to break you out and me to keep a lookout and locate you two. Midoriya's not here though. I see. Todoroki silently picked up Bakugou, much to the others' protest. Izuku shot you in the leg, you can't walk on it. Wait, Midoriya did that? Wow, whatever's affecting him is sure powerful, Kirishima said before leading the way out of the boat. Actually, we may have figured out what it was. During the Hirokin thing, Midoriya was restrained, and they tried to inject him with something. Emiko shot the syringe, breaking it, but the liquid splashed on Midoriya while he had lots of open wounds. Bakugou explained, not liking being carried. Kirishima nodded. That would probably do it. They got outside where the rest of class 1 several teachers and a few police stood. Todoroki made an ice bridge to them, and when they reached the shore, recovery girl walked over to Todoroki and looked at Bakugou. Izuku shot him in the leg for swearing, Todoroki explained. As soon as I get my hands on him, I am punching him in the gut. He knocked me and Shoto out, then shot me, Bakugou yelled, growling. Where is Midoriya? Aizawa asked. He said he was going to go get us food. I don't know where exactly he went though. Todoroki laid Bakugou down so recovery girl could check on his injury. I'm right here, and I must say this isn't good. Everyone looked at the bottom of the stairs to see Midoriya, who had Toshinori restrained with rope and duct tape over his mouth. And to think I was going to have 3 helpers. I guess not, at least not now. Don't worry though, Cake and Shotokan, I'll save you from the fakes once I have a better base. Aizawa rushed forward, sending out his scarfs, while also using his quirk. Midoriya dodged, grabbing Toshinori and pulling him away as he moved. Aizawa's eyes narrowed as he kept his gaze on Midoriya. Midoriya smiled. You know, you are a pretty good hero, and teacher Yao definitely fit into the world. I'm going to make so why fight it? It will just be easier to surrender. Midoriya, you are not in the right state of mind right now, Aizawa said, getting closer. Midoriya scanned the crowd of people, deciding on an exit strategy. When he noticed some people were missing, he bent forward just in time as Uraraka reached out to grab him, grabbing her instead and flipping her over his shoulder, and to the ground. He grabbed Toshinori again, and jumped away as Ida came barreling past attempting to grab either the green-haired teen or his hostage. He played just into their hands. Though because a second later Midoriya felt ice crawling up his legs and trap him, Midoriya glared slightly at Todoroki, who just stared back blankly. Good job, Ida-kun, and Todoroki-kun Yururoka cheered, happy that their plan was a success. Midoriya laughed. Cute, how you think that you won? Aizawa can't keep his eyes open forever though. Midoriya pulled out a throwing knife and chucked it at Aizawa, who jumped out of the way. But in doing so looked away from Midoriya. Midoriya powered up one for all and broke through the ice, running away with his hostage, who was struggling against the ropes. We won't let you escape, Deku-kun. Midoriya felt one for all disappear and looked back to see almost everyone chasing him. He grinned and pulled out a small trigger. Watch your step. He clicked it. And as soon as he did, several explosions went off between him and the others. It was the same ones from the sports festival race. By the time the smoke had cleared, Midoriya and Toshinori were gone. Bakugou growled as he sat on an infirmary bed, Todoroki sitting next to him. Everyone was still searching for Midoriya and Toshinori. Even though it was now well into the night, Inko had been informed about what was happening and was brought on campus in case she could help talk Midoriya out of it. Your face is going to freeze like that, Todoroki said, glancing up from his book. How the fuck can you be reading at a time like this? Bakugou snapped, glaring at Todoroki. Because Midoriya will eventually come after us again. That plus the campus being on lockdown means he must still be here. Either well find him or hell come to us, Todoroki answered, smirking slightly. Bakugou looked at him in surprise before grinning. Alright, I can agree with that. And this time we won't be surprised. So we can beat him. Todoroki nodded and went back to reading. Before long, Yururoka burst in. We found them. Midoriya was hiding in a classroom. They're still there now and we're coming up with a plan. Todoroki stood and helped Bakugou up, letting the shorter male lean on him. As they followed Yururoka, she led them to the group of people from earlier. Aizawa glanced up at them, then looked back at the group. Alright, here's how we're going to do this. We need a small group to approach from the top down, while the rest of the group will come in from downstairs, drawing his attention and trapping him. The small group will grab Toshinori while Midoriya is distracted, then join up with the rest and help restrain him. I'll go with the small group, Todoroki and Bakugou said at the same time. Aizawa shook his head. Hell, be suspicious if Todoroki isn't there, so Todoroki, y'all have to go with the big group. Bakugou, you can be in the small group. Though Midoriya might not suspect anything because of your leg injury. Ms. Midoriya, would you like to go with the small group as well? Inko nodded. If Izuku isn't drawn away by the rest of you, I can distract him long enough to help Toshinori escape. Aizawa nodded again. That makes sense, as I highly doubt he will hurt you. From what I heard, the only reason he shot Bakugou was because he was swearing. He looked at the rest of the group. While we know that Midoriya won't hurt Bakugou, Todoroki, or Miss Midoriya, we have no clue how he will react to anyone else. He is unstable right now thanks to whatever liquid that the love managed to get into his system. Approach with caution. He knows all your weaknesses and strengths. Midoriya is smart and probably has a lot of strategies on how to take us down, so do your best to be unpredictable. Speaking of Midoriya, he was currently preparing for an attack he knew was coming. He glanced at Toshinori, who was pleading with him to stop this ever since the duct tape was taken off. Any minute now, All Might. He smiled slightly at Toshinori. But it wasn't a happy smile, believe me. I know I've sunk pretty low. But whatever I've done, you all deserve. Izuku. Quiet. Midoriya glared slightly, not liking being interrupted. They say I'm a bad guy. That's fine, it's no fault of mine, and some justice at last will be served. Please listen, you're not. Midoriya glared at him again. Now it's time to step up, or it's time to back down. And there's only one answer for me. He put on his gloves that he had taken off earlier and picked up his gun. And I'll stand up and fight, cause I know that I'm right and I'm ready to face them all, ready as I'll ever be. Izuku. Toshinori looked at the gun in his son's hands. Sadly, he hoped that Midoriya came to his senses before he seriously hurt someone. Back on the ground at the entrance, Todoroki was looking up at the window where he knew Midoriya and Toshinori, where he clenched his fist as he thought about how he wasn't able to go with the small group, but relaxed thinking about how the big group was more likely to encounter him. With that in mind, Todoroki spun around to face the rest of Class 1A and the teachers. Now it's time to rise up, or it's time to stand down. And the answer is easy to see. Todoroki looked at his fellow students, all wearing their hero costumes like himself. They needed any advantage they could get. His classmates were looking at him seriously, knowing that they needed to put their all into this. And I swear by my love, if you're in, get on board. Are you ready? Steam was starting to come off of Todoroki's left side as ice formed on his right. Everyone could see his inner turmoil and feelings, no matter how stoic he usually was. I'm ready, Yururoka shouted, followed by the others yelling out that they were also ready. Ready as I'll ever be, Todoroki said to himself, looking back up at the window. He seemed to pump everyone up pretty well. Present, Mike commented to Aizawa, who nodded. He is separated from the people who give him the most support in his life, because one of them isn't sane right now. Todoroki is trying to make up for that by putting out fake confidence, Aizawa said, following Todoroki's gaze as they started into the building. Bakugou and 𝐭 just made it to the top. Bakugou opened the hatch that lead into the school and glanced at 𝗏. She was frowning, and looking away. 𝗏 took a deep breath and looked at Bakugou. "Are you quite sure we can do this?" Bakugou smirked, holding out his hand for her as he stepped inside. "Together, we will guarantee that All Might is saved and Deku gets help." 𝗏 nodded and took the boy's hand. Together they entered from the top. Back with Midoriya, he watched with a narrowed gaze as his classmates and teachers entered the school. "I'll make them fear me." With Todoroki, his group was making lots of noise trying to draw Midoriya down. "They can trust me." Bakugou, meanwhile, made sure to lead 𝗏 safely down the dark building. During that time, he quietly made a promise to himself. "I'll save Deku and All Might." Todoroki's group looked up at the stairs in front of them. They knew that the line is in the sand and that their moment was at hand. Todoroki clenched his fist, knowing he would soon face Midoriya. "We're ready," Uraraka said, placing a hand on his shoulder to comfort him. Todoroki nodded. "I'm ready too." 𝗏 and Bakugou were saying the same things to themselves as they approached the classroom. "We're ready." Midoriya himself was smirking from his room, raising a fist. "I'm ready as I'll ever be."